My sister's hand did not pull back. She slid the second photograph out from under the first one so she could see it better. Her thumbnail was painted the same soft pink she had worn to my engagement dinner. I had been sitting across from that hand for 36 years. I taught it to hold a fork. I taught it to write the letter H, 14 months before that afternoon. The two of them killed one of my men and let me carry it as my own fault. 4 weeks before that afternoon. I sat alone in my shop office at midnight and listened to my sister's voice come out of the cab of a truck nobody had driven since the funeral. And at 4 o'clock that afternoon, I stood behind a kitchen door in a diner off Highway 53 and heard her ask whether the money would come faster if the county called it an accident. The photographs on the table were of me. I was on the concrete floor of my own shop with a dock door across my chest. There was blood in my hair on the right side. One boot had come off and landed about a yard away, which is exactly what happens. 2 agents took 17 of those pictures that morning with an ordinary camera while I lay there and counted my own breathing. My name is Kirsten Halverson. I am 47 years old. I own a commercial door and dock company in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. 7 people, 4 trucks, and a metal building out on County Highway J that my husband and I paid off the year before he died. I am not a police officer. I am not a lawyer. I hang overhead doors and I rebuild loading dock levelers. And I have done it for 22 years. The only thing I know how to do that most people cannot is read a machine and tell you whether it failed or whether somebody helped it fail. That turned out to be enough. If you have ever signed a piece of paper for somebody in your own family and wished later that you had read it first, put 1 word in the comments. Any word. It does not have to be a long story. Hit the like button and subscribe, because what happened in that diner took 11 months to build and it happened in about 90 seconds. And I want you to hear all of it. Now let me put you back at that table. The man across from my sister was calling himself Marty. He wore a ball cap and a canvas jacket, and he had a pickup outside with road salt crusted behind the wheel wells. He looked like every guy who has ever done drywall in this county. He had told them he came down from Duluth. He had told them a lot of things, and every one of them had been approved by somebody in a federal office in Eau Claire before he said it out loud. Marty had put the envelope on the table and slid it across the formica with 2 fingers. Grant did not touch it. That is the part I still think about. My fiancé. The man I had picked out a September wedding date with. Sat with both hands wrapped around a coffee cup and looked out the window at the parking lot like a man waiting for a tow truck. He did not want to see it, not because it made him sick, because seeing it was not his job. My sister reached over and pulled the envelope to her side of the table. She opened the clasp with her thumb. She took out the top photograph and she looked at it for maybe 4 seconds. Her face did not do anything. Then she slid the second one out from under it and held it a little closer to the window. The way you do with a receipt when the print is small. Behind that kitchen door, I had my hand flat against the metal frame, and the metal was cold, and the pie case was running on my left, and I remember thinking that the compressor needed a new fan bearing. That is all I felt. A compressor with a bad bearing. Shelby put the photographs face down on the table. She squared the edges up like she was putting a stack of invoices away. Then she asked her question, and her voice was the same voice she used to ask whether we should get the good ham for Easter. Marty told her he was not the insurance man. Then he leaned back against the vinyl, and he asked the 2 of them something else. He asked how it went last time. He said he liked to know how a thing was handled before, so he did not do it different and make somebody curious. And my sister looked at Grant, and Grant put down his coffee cup. I will get back to what he said. I need you to understand the shop first, because everything that happened to me happened inside it. Go back to March. I unlocked the man door on the east side at 6:15 every morning. Not 6. Not 6:30. 6:15. Because that was when my father-in-law opened it, and that was when Pete opened it, and I never saw a reason to argue with two dead men about a start time. The light switches were in a metal box by the door. 6 breakers in a row, and I brought them up one bay at a time. Bay 1, Bay 2, Bay 3. The high bay lamps took about 90 seconds to come all the way up. So for a minute and a half the building was orange instead of white, and everything in it looked softer than it was. Sectional door panels stacked on edge, torsion shafts in the rack along the north wall, sorted by length. A pallet of dock bumpers that had been sitting there since Christmas because the customer kept pushing his install date. The place smelled like bearing grease and burnt coffee. It smelled like that when I was 25, and it smelled like that the morning all of this started. Overhead door number 2 on the shop bays stuck at the 3rd roller. It had stuck at the 3rd roller for 2 years. I could have fixed it in 40 minutes with a track shim and a hex driver. I never did. And every single morning I heard it catch and told myself I would get to it. That was my company. Halverson Door and Dock. 7 people, 4 trucks, and a metal building on County Highway J with a gravel lot that turns into a skating rink from November to April. We hung and serviced commercial doors, sectional doors for the co-op in Bloomer, rolling steel for the fire hall, cold storage doors and dock levelers and vehicle restraints for the creamery over in Cadott. Nobody thinks about a loading dock until it stops working, and then they think about nothing else. And then they call me. My husband was Pete Halverson. He put the business in both our names the week we got married. He died 5 years ago, on a Thursday, in the parts aisle of a farm supply store in front of 9 people. He was 42. There is nothing more to that story. Some men go slow and some men go all at once. And Pete went all at once. And I kept the name and the building and the way he hung his wrenches. I kept the schedule on a dry erase board bolted to the wall outside my office. 7 columns, 5 rows, 1 week at a time, names down the left, days across the top. It was the least modern thing in the building, and it was the reason the building ran. There was a spot on that 2nd row down, where the marker never came all the way off. You could lay a fresh coat of white over it, and the next morning you could still see the shape of the letters underneath if the light came in the window a certain way. The name that used to be in that row was Dale Croning. Dale was my lead installer for 22 years, which means he was the lead installer here before the shop was mine. He taught me. When I was 27 and shaking on a ladder for the first time, Dale stood at the bottom holding it and told me that a torsion spring does not care how nice a person you are. 14 months before that March morning, Dale went out to the co-op in Bloomer to convert a bad extension setup to torsion on a 12x14 sectional. Routine work. He had done 100 of them. The center-bearing plate let go while he was up on the ladder making his final adjustment. 800 pounds of counterbalance came off the shaft at once. The plate spun and it hit him, and he went off the ladder onto a concrete floor. He was 58 years old. The determination came back as improper installation and material fatigue. OSHA cited us. Our insurance carrier doubled our premium and then told us what we had to change if we wanted a policy at all. I came within about 6 weeks of closing the doors and selling the shafts for scrap. For 14 months I believed I killed Dale Croning. Not with my hands. With a schedule and a set of eyes that should have caught something. They gave me the part back after the investigation closed. A 4-inch cast center bearing plate. 2 set screws still in it. 1 corner scarred where it came off the shaft. I could not throw it away. I could not put it on a shelf either. It sat on the back left corner of my desk in a Folgers can with the label torn halfway off, and my pens were in there with it. That morning I made the coffee, and I walked the board, and I marked out the co-op job for Thursday. Loretta came in at 6:30, like she had come in at 6:30 for 31 years, hung her coat on the second hook, and started the machine over again because she said I made it too weak. The trucks pulled out by 7:15. At 7:10, my sister's chair at the front desk was still empty. She came through the door at 7:50, 40 minutes late, hair wet, apologizing before the door shut behind her. And she had 2 coffees from the Quick Trip in her hands. She put mine on the counter and slid it toward me and said she owed me. I picked it up. It was still hot enough to burn my mouth. I want to tell you about my sister. And I am going to do it with 3 afternoons instead of a summary, because a summary would let both of us off too easy. The first one is a Tuesday in October, 21 years ago. Our mother died on a Sunday, and by Tuesday there was a woman from the county sitting at our kitchen table with a folder. Shelby was 15, I was 26 and 8 credits short of an associate degree in construction management. And I had a boyfriend in Madison and a plan that involved leaving. The woman explained the options in a voice she probably used 40 times a month. Then she slid the guardianship paperwork across the table and put her pen on top of it. The room smelled like bleach. My aunt had cleaned it the night before because she did not know what else to do with her hands. I signed it. I did not agonize. I want to be honest about that because people always assume there was a long dark night involved. There was not. There was a pen on a folder, and a 15-year-old sitting on the stairs behind me with her shoes still on, and I signed it in about 4 seconds. And then I drove to Madison the following weekend and packed my dorm room into the back of Pete's truck. I never went back for the 8 credits. That is not a complaint. It is just a fact that sat in the house with us for 21 years. The second afternoon is 2 years ago, in the driveway. Shelby's marriage ended the way a lot of them end around here, which is slowly, and then in one afternoon over a phone bill. She pulled in with a Corolla packed to the headliner and a laundry basket in the passenger seat, and she sat in the car for a while before she came to the door. I put her in her old room. I did not ask her how long. She did not offer a date. 3 weeks later, I gave her the front desk, answering the phone, cutting the work orders, running parts to the trucks, and keeping that dry erase board current. It was a real job. We had been running the desk with Loretta doing it on top of the books for 1.5 years, and Loretta was 66 and telling me every Friday that she was going to retire. Shelby was good at it. I want that on the record, too. She remembered which customers wanted a call before the truck rolled and which ones wanted to be left alone. She called the creamery guy by his first name inside a month. Twice she caught a wrong part number on a purchase order before it shipped. For a while it was the best the house had been since Pete. The third afternoon is a Friday, also 2 years ago, about 6 weeks after that. The Rod and Gun Club does a fish fry every Friday from September through May. Cod potato pancakes, coleslaw in a paper boat, a bar in the back with the game on. Half the county goes. You do not go to meet anyone. You go because it is Friday. Shelby got up in the middle of dinner and came back with her hand on a man's arm. "Kirsten," she said. "This is Grant. He fixed the furnace at Zion last month and did not charge them. That is how I met the man I was going to marry." My sister brought him to the table. Grant Vollmer was 44 then. Structural welding, mostly subcontract, mostly ag and light industrial. Big through the shoulders in the way that men who lift for a living are big, not the way men who lift on purpose are big. He had a nail on his left hand that had been dropped on and had grown back with a ridge in it. He was easy to be around, and he did not talk much. And everything I learned about him for the first year, I learned by watching him do things. He came out to the house in December because I mentioned in passing that the back door had dropped and was catching on the jamb. He did not tell me he was coming. I got home and the door swung clean and there was a hinge shim in the trash and he never brought it up. Not once. I brought it up 3 days later. And he said the top screw had stripped into the frame and he sank a longer one. And then he changed the subject. He brought coffee out to my guys on cold mornings. He knew the difference between a job you help with and a job you take over, which is a thing about half the men I know never learn. And in October, on the anniversary of the day Pete died, he showed up at 6 in the evening with a rotisserie chicken and did not say a word about the date. I asked him how he knew. He said Shelby must have mentioned it at some point, and he set the chicken down, and while he answered me, he took the thumb of his right hand and rubbed the knuckle of his left ring finger. 2 passes, back and forth. I noticed it. I remember noticing it. And I remember what I decided it meant, which was that he was a man who had worn a wedding ring for 11 years and still reached for it. He asked me in November, in the cab of his truck, in the co-op parking lot, which is exactly as romantic as it sounds. We set the wedding for the 13th of September at Zion. Small, with a dinner at the Rod and Gun after. Shelby asked if she could stand up with me. I said yes before she finished the sentence. I still remember exactly what her voice did when she asked. Loretta did not hand you things. She set them down, and then she put one finger on the line she wanted you to look at, and she waited. It was the 2nd week of March. She came into my office with the fleet card statement, laid it on my desk, and put her finger on line 11. Quick trip. Bloomer. 4 minutes after 11 at night. On a Tuesday. $62.40 in diesel. Then, on the same transaction, 2 packs of cigarettes and a 12-pack of beer. Nobody at my shop smokes. That was the first thing. The second thing was that Truck 3 had been parked in my yard since 4:45 that Tuesday afternoon, and I chained the gate at 6. I sat there and read the line 4 or 5 times. Loretta did not say anything. She has a way of standing that is not standing over you, exactly, but it is not leaving either. Could be a card skimmed, I said. Could be, she said. Bloomer's 20 minutes. It is. She took her finger off the paper and went back to the books. I brought it up at the front desk around 10. I did not make a production of it. I put the statement on the counter and asked Shelby if she knew anything about a fuel charge out at the Bloomer Quick Trip on Tuesday night. She looked at it for about 1.5 seconds. Oh, she said. Yeah, that was me. Trevor got stuck out there with his own truck. The alternator quit, and he called me because he couldn't get you. I ran him gas and he wanted me to grab him smokes and a 12-pack while I was there. And he said he'd pay me back, and I said just put it on the card and I'd take it out of his check. I should have written it up. I'm sorry. Trevor is one of my installers. He is 26. He does smoke. And his truck is a 2009 with 190,000 miles on it, and it has quit on him twice that I know about. Every part of that answer was checkable. I did not check it. I want to be careful here, because when you tell this part of the story out loud, people get a look on their face. They think you were stupid, or they think you were weak, and neither one of those is what it was. It was 21 years. It was a 15-year-old on the stairs with her shoes still on. It was every parent-teacher conference I sat through with a shop jacket over a sweater. It was driving to the river at 11 at night in my nightgown and a coat because she skipped school and nobody knew where she was, and finding her on the bank and driving her home and not saying one word about it the whole way. When you have been somebody's mother without being her mother, you do not run her explanations through a checker. You just do not. There is no room built into you for it. So I said thank you for telling me, and I asked her to write it up next time. And I went back to my office. 2 mornings later it hit 18 below with the wind, and truck 2 would not turn over. That is the other thing about March up here. You can have a morning where somebody in your family lies to your face, and then the next morning the whole building is standing around a dead battery. And the second morning feels a lot more real than the first one. We had the hood up and jumper cables on it, and it was cranking slow and then not cranking at all. Trevor was on the batteries. I was in the cab pumping the pedal like that has ever helped anything. Wendell Traxler walked over with his coffee, looked at it for maybe 10 seconds, and asked if I had a hammer. He got down on the ice under the front end, reached up past the frame rail, and hit the starter housing 3 times, not hard, in the same spot. He came back out, brushed off his knee, and told Trevor to try it. It fired on the first turn. Wendell had been a seasonal welder for me for 4 years by then. Dock plates, guide angle, curb repairs, anything that needs a bead in a bad position. He did 6 years for organized retail theft. He was part of a crew that ran trailers out of distribution yards from here down to the Quad Cities, and he was the one who cut the locks. He got out 4 years before that morning, and he was still on paper, which means a supervising agent, which means he asked permission to leave the state. Nobody would hire him. I know that because I asked around before I did it. And I got the same tone from 3 different shop owners. I hired him because Dale said to. Dale had known his father. Wendell showed up 20 minutes early every single day. He carried a green metal lunchbox with a rounded lid, the old kind, and he set it on the same spot on the bench by the flat stock every morning, and he took it home every night. In 4 years, I never once saw him come through that door without it. Remember that? That night I stayed late to pull the fleet statements from the year before, because I wanted to see whether Bloomer had shown up on them, and I had just never looked. The file drawer was locked. The key to that drawer hangs on a cup hook under the counter at the front desk. I did not go get the key. It was after 8. I had been up since 5. And the renewal packet from our carrier was due back in 11 days, and that packet was going to eat the rest of my week. So instead of chasing a fuel charge, I spent the next 2 afternoons doing paperwork. I need to walk you through those 2 afternoons in detail. I know that sounds like the least interesting thing I could tell you. Sit with it anyway. Everything that saved me later got put in place on those 2 afternoons, and none of it looked like anything at the time. Start with the cameras. After Dale, our carrier did not just raise the premium. They sent a 4-page letter with conditions on it. 3 of the conditions were about torsion procedures and lockout. One of them was about the trucks. They wanted in-cab cameras. 2 lens units, 1 facing the road, 1 facing the seats, with audio in all 4 trucks, recording continuously, retained a minimum of 30 days. I fought it for about 2 weeks, and then I signed the check. Because the alternative was going to market for coverage as a shop with an open fatality file, and I already knew what that answer was going to be. Dale would have raised the roof. He hated being listened to. He used to sing along to the radio in truck 4, badly, all day. And he knew we could all hear him on the 2-way when he keyed it by accident, and he did not care. But a microphone he did not control was a different thing entirely. The units retain 90 days on our plan, not 30. I never went to the higher tier on purpose. It came bundled. In 14 months, I opened a clip exactly twice. Once for a mirror that got taken off in Menominee, and once when a customer claimed my guy backed into a bollard that had been bent since the Clinton administration. Now the paperwork part. If you are going to record your people, you have to tell them you are recording them, and you have to be able to prove you told them. Our agent, Vern Ostrander, was very clear about that. He said it twice on the phone, and then he mailed me a sample. So I rewrote the employee handbook. It was 11 pages when I was done. Page 4 was the new one. In-cab video and audio recording, company vehicles, continuous operation, no expectation of privacy in the cab. Recordings are company property. Review at the discretion of the owner. Then I had everybody sign it. I did the crew in the break room on a Thursday with donuts, which is the only way to get 7 people to sign anything. Wendell read all 11 pages. He was the only one. I did my sister at the kitchen table at home, because she had already gone for the day. She had a plate on her lap and the television going. I handed her the last page and a pen, and she balanced the plate on the arm of the chair and signed it against her knee. "What's this for?" she said. "So the insurance company can't sue us." "Okay," she said, and she handed it back. And she went back to the show. Blue ink, the date next to it, in her handwriting. That page went into her personnel folder in the bottom drawer of the file cabinet in my office, behind her application and her W-4, and I did not think about it again until the night I needed it. That is 2 of the 3. Here is the 3rd. There is a cabinet on the wall in the shop office, to the left of the parts window. My father-in-law built it out of oak in 1981, and it has a piano hinge and a magnetic catch and 32 brass hooks inside it. 4 rows of 8. Those are customer keys. When you service commercial doors, you end up holding keys. The co-op wants the 6 o'clock call handled before their people get in. The fire hall cannot have my truck sitting outside waiting for somebody with a key ring. The creamery has a door on the north dock that has to be run manually if it faults. And they gave me a key in 2014, and nobody has asked for it back since. Every hook has a paper tag on a wire, in Loretta's handwriting, and there is a sheet inside the door listing what is on each hook. The last hook on the right, bottom row, is not a customer. It is my house. Pete put it there. He put it there the winter I locked myself out at 11 at night with the truck running and had to break the basement window. And he made a copy the next morning and hung it on the end hook and wrote the word house on the tag and never said another word about it. It stayed on that hook for 11 years. Everybody who has ever worked for me knows what that hook is. It is not a secret. It is not supposed to be a secret. That is the whole point of a key cabinet. Grant came by at 4:30 on the second afternoon to pick Shelby up. Her car was in for a wheel bearing. He came in through the shop, said hello to Wendell, waited by the parts window with his hands in his jacket pockets, and looked at the ceiling the way a man does when he is being polite about waiting. I thought that was kind of him. I locked up at 6. I remember it because the deadbolt did not catch the first time, and I had to do it twice. The renewal packet went out on the 11th day. I remember feeling good about that. 6 weeks later, the co-op called about a check. Their office manager is a woman named Arletta who has been doing their books since before I had a driver's license, and she does not call to chat. She called on a Wednesday morning and asked why we were still showing $4,200 open on their account when the check cleared their bank in the middle of April. Loretta pulled it up while Arletta was still on the line. On our side, that invoice was open. Nothing had been applied to it. Nothing had been deposited against it. "Ask her for the check images," Loretta said. Arletta had them in 11 minutes. 2 images came through on the fax that we keep, because half our customers still fax, front and back. The front was ordinary, $4,200, made out to Halverson Door and Dock, signed by their general manager, dated the 9th of April. Loretta turned it over on the desk so we could both see the back. There was one line on it, an endorsement, in blue ballpoint, written fast, Kirsten Halverson. I looked at it for a long time. I am going to tell you exactly what I did next, because it is the closest thing to a professional skill I have, and it is the only reason any of this ever came apart. I did not get emotional, and I did not call anybody. I reached over to Loretta's desk and took a sticky note off the pad, and I signed my own name on it, and I set it down next to the fax image, and I lined the two up. My H has a straight leg. Both posts come straight down and the crossbar sits high, almost at the top because I learned to write it, copying it off the sign on the front of this building. And that sign was cut by a man in 1968 who did not do curves. The H on the back of that check had a hook. The right leg came down, and then it turned back in at the bottom, a little tail curling toward the left. It is the kind of thing you would never notice unless you already knew it. It is also the kind of thing that does not happen by accident. Nobody's hand does that on its own. A 12-year-old girl practiced that hook for a whole summer at our kitchen table because she saw a girl at school do it and she thought it looked like something. I taught her the letter, and she improved on it, and then she kept it for the rest of her life. Loretta did not say anything for a while. Then she took her reading glasses off and let them hang, and she said one sentence. "Kirsten, I have been doing your books longer than she has been alive." I did not answer her. I did not answer her because there was nothing to say that was not either a lie or a decision. And I was not ready to make a decision at 9:40 in the morning on a Wednesday. I told her to call Arletta back and tell her we would sort it on our end and to please not put it in writing anywhere yet. I told her to pull the last 12 months of deposits against every co-op invoice, and then I got my coat. I went out to the lot and got in my truck. I did not start it. I sat there with my hands on the bottom of the wheel, and I watched Trevor and Wendell load 2 sections of guide angle onto truck 1. And I watched Trevor drop his end and Wendell say something to him about it, and I watched them get it up on the second try. The dome light in my truck has a bad switch, and it stays on for 4 minutes, and then it quits. It went out while I was sitting there. Then the motion light on the corner of the building went out, which takes 12 minutes, which means I had not moved in 12 minutes. Here is what I was doing in there. I was building the version of this where it is not what it is. I got pretty far with it, too. Somebody at the bank could have written the endorsement while she stood there. She could have picked the check up as a favor and gotten confused about a personal account and a business account. She had been doing the deposits for the creamery for a year without a single problem, which was true. Every road I went down came back to the same place, which is that $4,200 had left the co-op and had not arrived here, and it had my name on the back of it, and it was not my name. At some point the shop lights came on inside because the sun had moved. I got out of the truck and went back in and worked until 6. I did not say one word to my sister that day, and she did not notice. I waited until Thursday night. I did it at home, at the kitchen table, because I was not going to do it in a building where 7 people were going to have to keep working the next morning. I made pork chops. I want you to know that. I made her supper first, and we ate it, and I asked about her friend Kaylee's new job, and then I cleared the plates and I came back and I put the fax image face up on the table in front of her. Then I sat down across from her and I did not say anything. That is the only piece of technique I used the whole night. Dale taught it to me on a job site with a subcontractor who had put in the wrong track. You put the thing on the table and then you shut your mouth, because whatever they say into that silence is the truest thing you are going to get out of them. For about 30 seconds she went the way people go. Where did you get that? The co-op sent it. That's not... Okay, that's the bank. They do that sometimes. When you deposit a business check, they have a teller sign it if you don't have the stamp with you. Shelby? I'm serious. They do. Shelby? And then she stopped. I have seen my sister cry a lot of times in 21 years. Some of those times she was working me and both of us knew it. This was not one of those. Her face came apart. Her nose ran and she did not wipe it. She got that hitch in her breathing that she has had since she was 7, where she takes in air twice on the way up. She put both hands flat on the table like she was trying to hold it down. How much I said. 4,002? How much all of it? She said a number. It was more than 4,002, and it included the fuel card, and it included 2 customer checks I did not know about yet from February, and it included $340 in cash out of the box in the parts room over about a year. What's it for? I said. And then she told me, and everything she told me was true. $19,000 on a card from the marriage, 29.9%. The card was in her name only because he had run his up first. And when the divorce split the debt, she got that one because it was hers on paper. The minimum payment was $410 a month, and about $360 of it went to interest. So the balance had moved out $1,100 in 2 years. I knew the marriage was bad. I did not know that. Why didn't you tell me? I said. And she gave me the sentence. She was not building toward it. It came out flat and fast on the back of a breath, the way the real ones come out. Because you already raised me once, she said. I didn't want you to have to do it again. I want to stop here and say something to you directly. If you are listening to this and you are thinking that a person who says that to you is running a play on you, I understand why you think that. You are also right about half the time. But sit at that table with me. Everything else she said checked out. The card was real. The interest rate was real. The number was right. She had been carrying it for 2 years without saying a word to me while she ate my food and slept in her old room. And every bit of that lined up with a woman who was too proud and too far in. I believed her. I would like to tell you I believed her against my better judgment. I did not. I believed her with my better judgment. That is worse. We did the dishes together after. That is the part that comes back on me. I washed and she dried, the way we did when the house was our mother's, and neither one of us said anything for a while. And the window over the sink was black because it was May and the sun had already gone down behind the Hendricksons' barn. And then, with her hands still in the towel, she asked me a question. Hey, how long does a life insurance policy have to be open before they can't fight it? I did not even look up. 2 years, I said. After 2 years, they can't contest it. Why, I was thinking about getting one, since I don't have anything. You should, I said. Mine's 4 years in. You're the one on it. She said something about how that was morbid. I said that is what a policy is. She hung the towel over the oven handle and she went upstairs. And I stood there and finished wiping the counter and thought about how well the night had gone. Out the front window. Down at the corner where our street meets the county road. A set of headlights was sitting in the dark with the engine running. They sat there a while. Then they backed up and pulled away. We had a plan after that. She was going to pay back $400 a month. I was going to eat the co-op invoice out of the operating account. And she was off the fuel card and off the deposits. And Loretta was going to take the front counter money back. It lasted 9 days. On the 10th day, an envelope came to the shop from First Chippewa Bank. Business mail comes to County Highway J. Personal mail comes to the house. That has been true since Pete. Loretta opens everything that comes to the shop. And she has opened everything that comes to the shop for 31 years. And that is the only reason I ever saw it. She brought it in without a word and she did not put her finger on any line this time. She just set the whole thing down. It was a monthly statement on a commercial real estate line of credit. Borrower, Halverson Door and Dock. Secured property. The parcel on County Highway J. Origination date the previous September. Credit limit $75,000. Amount drawn $60,000. There had been 8 payments. All of them interest only. All of them made on time. Out of an account I did not recognize. I looked at that account number for a while. It was not the operating account. It was not payroll. It was not the money market where I park the tax set aside. Somebody had been paying a little over $400 a month on that thing for 8 months, on time, every time, to keep it quiet. And they had been paying it out of a place I could not see from where I was sitting. I have signed a lot of paper for this business. I signed for the roof in 2017, and I signed for truck 4, and I signed the note that bought Pete's brother out of his third of the land. I have never in my life signed a line of credit against that building, because that building is the only thing between me and having nothing. And I would remember, I called the bank and got a young man in commercial lending who was very helpful and told me nothing, because I sounded upset and he did not know who I was, which is exactly what he is supposed to do. So I did it the other way. A mortgage against real property does not live at the bank. It gets recorded. It goes into the county, and it becomes a public document, and anybody with $2 can walk in and get a copy. The Register of Deeds for Chippewa County is on the second floor of the courthouse downtown. Green carpet, 4 chairs, a counter with a laminate top that has a burn ring on it from somebody's coffee cup in about 1990. There is a copier back there older than my trucks that makes a noise like a washing machine with a shoe in it. I filled out the request slip with a golf pencil. The woman behind the counter found it in about 4 minutes, 12 pages, $2 a page. I paid $24 for it, and I stood at the end of the counter and read it standing up, because there was no way I was carrying it down to the truck first. Page 1 had the property description. Page 7 had the terms. Page 11 had the signature. Kirsten D. Halverson. The D is for Dorothy. It is my mother's name. It is on my birth certificate, and it is on my social security card, and it is on the employee tax forms in the bottom drawer of my file cabinet. It has not been in my signature since the year I got married. I dropped it because Pete's whole family signed short, and I thought it looked cleaner. And I have signed everything the same way ever since. First name, last name, no middle initial. Whoever wrote that had my legal name. They did not have my hand. The letter H had the hook. I want you to understand the shape of the thing I was standing in front of at that counter, because I did not understand it yet. And it took me another 2 minutes. The fuel card was a person taking money. The check was a person taking money and lying about it. But a line of credit against real property is not something you do alone at a kitchen table with a pen. You have to sit down in front of somebody. You have to hand them a driver's license. You have to be looked at by a human being who then puts a stamp on it and swears in writing that they looked at you. My sister could not have done that alone. My sister does not look like me. She is 11 years younger. She is 4 inches shorter, and she has our father's coloring. Somebody signed off on that. Loretta called me while I was still at the counter. I read her the terms page over the phone. She asked me exactly one question, which was whether the legal description matched our parcel, and I told her it did, and she said all right, and she hung up, and by the time I got back she had started a file. I turned to page 12. Down in the bottom right corner there was a round stamp, and a signature, and a printed name underneath it, and an expiration date. I read the name 3 times. Then I folded the whole thing in half and carried it down the stairs and out to the parking lot. And I did not remember doing either one of those things until I was already in the truck. The name on the stamp was Paulette Rademacher. I did not know her. I knew of her the way you know of everybody in a county this size. She works at the insurance and title office on Main in Bloomer, the one with the awning, and she is a notary the way half the front office people in a small town are notaries, which is that it is 1 line on a job description and it pays nothing, and it is mostly farm leases and car titles. I did not call her from the courthouse. I drove to the Piggly Wiggly in Chippewa Falls, parked at the far end where the carts get left, and called from there with the document on my lap. She picked up on the 4th ring. There was a printer going behind her. I told her who I was, and I told her I was looking at a mortgage she notarized last September, and I asked her if she remembered it. She did. She remembered it right away, and she was pleasant about it. And that is the part that made my stomach go. "Sure," she said. "The door company. That was a while ago now. Can you tell me who signed it?" "Well, you did." I did not say anything. "I would have had the license out on the counter," she said. "I always do. I write the license number in the book. Hang on. I can look. Do you want me to look?" I said yes. I listened to her walk somewhere and come back and turn pages. A notary keeps a journal. Date, document type, name, identification, signature of the person appearing. It is a bound book with numbered lines, and it is the only real check in the whole system. "Here it is," she said. "September the 18th, Halverson, Wisconsin license. There's the number." "Paulette," I said. "Can you describe the woman who signed it?" The printer stopped behind her. "Ma'am, I'm asking you to describe her." There was a pause. And then she went ahead and did it, because people mostly do when you ask them plainly. "Blonde," she said. "Not tall. She had one of those fleece jackets on. 30s, maybe. She was real friendly. I am not blonde. I have never been blonde. I am 5'9". I sat there with my hand on the top of the steering wheel, and I asked the question I had driven 20 minutes to a grocery store parking lot to ask, "Who brought the paperwork in?" And that is where she stopped being pleasant, because she finally heard it. I counted 4 seconds. "Mr. Vollmer," she said. "The cart corral at the far end of that lot is on a slope. Somebody had left a cart out of it, and it rolled the length of 4 parking spaces and hit my back bumper. I came off the seat. I dropped the phone into the footwell and my elbow hit the door panel and my heart went so hard that my ears rang. A grocery cart, 47 years old. And the first thing in my adult life that ever made me jump out of my skin was a grocery cart at the Piggly Wiggly on a Tuesday afternoon. I got the phone back off the floor. Paulette was saying hello. I did not yell at her. I want that on the record, because I have thought about it a lot since. And there was a version of me available that afternoon that would have taken that woman apart, and she would have deserved some of it. But she is a front office employee in a town of 3,500 people, making probably $18 an hour, and a man she has known since high school walked in with a woman and a folder, and she did what 9 out of 10 notaries in this country do, which is glance at the license and match the name and not think about it again. She is why it worked. She is not why it happened. I told her thank you. I told her not to talk to anybody about the call. She asked me twice if everything was all right, and I said I would let her know. Then I sat in that parking lot for a long time. Here is where my head was. Shelby taking money was a thing I could hold. It was ugly and it was going to cost me, and I could hold it. But Grant did not have a reason to be in that office. He was not on the account. He was not on the deed. He was not an officer of the company. He had no signature authority over $1 of my business. There was no errand in the world that put that man in a title office in Bloomer with a mortgage on my building in his hands. And there was one other thing, and it did not come to me until I was already back on Highway 124 with the heater running. That building is not his after we get married either. It is a corporation. It has been a corporation since 1989. Whatever he was doing in that office in September, he was doing it 2 months before he ever asked me to marry him. I asked him that night in the shop with one bank of lights on. I did it there on purpose, not at the house, not at a restaurant, in the building, with the recorded document on the workbench between us under the drop light, because I wanted to see his face when he looked at it, and I wanted the smell of the place around me while I did it. He read the whole thing. He took his time. He turned to the last page and looked at the stamp, and then he put it down and he pushed his cap back. "Oh, hell," he said. Then he told me a story, and I am going to give it to you the way he gave it to me, because you need to hear how good it was. Shelby called him in September. She was covering the desk alone that week because Loretta was in Rochester with her sister. She had a folder that had to get to Bloomer before 4 o'clock, and she could not leave the phones. He was running material to the elevator anyway. He took the folder. He said Paulette had him sign in on the visitor sheet and asked whose company it was, and he said Halverson, and Shelby came in about 20 minutes behind him because she got somebody to cover, and he waited in the truck. "I never opened it," he said. "It was your paperwork. I don't read other people's mail." And then he did the thing. He took the thumb of his right hand and he rubbed the knuckle of his left ring finger. 2 passes, back and forth. I saw it. I want to be clear that I saw it, right then, in the light off the drop cord. And what I did with it was file it under a man who was embarrassed that he handled something he should not have handled. That is the whole trick of it. He did not have to hide the tell. He only had to be the kind of man I had already decided he was. Everything he said was checkable, too. And this time, I did check one piece of it, because I was not the same woman I had been in March. I called the elevator in Bloomer and asked their office if a welder had run beams to them on the 18th of September. He had 2 loads, signed for, you see how that works. He put a true thing in the middle of it, and the true thing carried the rest. I did what I did. I went to my credit union on Monday, and I sat down with a woman I have banked with for 19 years, and I took a personal note for $62,000 at a rate that made her apologize out loud while she typed it. I paid off the line of credit, and I closed it, and I got the satisfaction recorded. And then I drove to the courthouse and paid $2 a page again to hold the copy in my hand. Then I took my sister off everything. Off the fleet cards, off the deposits, off the checkbook, off the online banking, off the key to the file cabinet, which I moved to my ring. She kept the desk. She kept the phones, the work orders, the parts runs, and the board. She did not fight me on it. She said thank you. She said it twice. Loretta came into my office at the end of that week and shut the door, which she does about once every 3 years. "You are keeping her," she said. "She's got a payment plan. Kirsten, she's got nowhere to go. Loretta." Loretta sat down in the chair across from my desk, and she took her glasses off, and she put them on her knee. "Nobody steals $60,000 because they are afraid of disappointing you," she said. "That is not what that is. A person who is afraid of disappointing you takes $40 out of the register and puts it back on Friday. I have watched people do that for 31 years. This is a different animal, and you know it is." I looked at her, and I said the sentence I have thought about more than any other sentence in my life. She's the only thing I have left of my mother. Loretta did not argue with me. That is the thing about her. She has never once tried to talk me out of a decision after I have made it. She just sat there for a second, and then she put her glasses back on and stood up. "All right," she said. "Then I am going to keep a copy of everything. Bank, deeds, the checks, the card statements, in my own file, at my house." "Do whatever you want," I said. "I intend to." And she went back out to her desk. Grant left around 6. I stood at the window in the shop office and watched his taillights go down the drive and stop at the county road and turn left toward town. And a question came up in me while I was standing there, all the way up, fully formed. And I want to tell you exactly what it was. He had told me the whole story of that afternoon in September, where he parked, what he signed, that he waited in the truck. He never once asked me where the title office in Bloomer was. I stood there with that for maybe 5 seconds. Then I decided that everybody in this county knows where the office with the awning is, and I turned off the light, and I went home and made supper. On the last Sunday in May, my sister and I made our mother's apple pie. It was her idea. She brought it up on Saturday, standing in the doorway of the living room with her arms crossed, in that careful voice people use when they are trying to give you something and are not sure it will be taken. "Do you still have the card?" she said. I still had the card. It is a 3x5 index card, ruled on one side, and it lives in a tin recipe box on top of the refrigerator with about 60 others. The tin has a picture of a rooster on it. Half the cards in there are in my grandmother's hand, and half of them are in my mother's, and you can tell them apart from across the room because my grandmother wrote in pencil. Our mother's apple pie card is the 4th one back in the P divider, blue ballpoint. The word nutmeg is smeared where somebody once set it down on a wet counter, so it reads more like nutmog. And there is a spot in the lower left corner where the paper has gone translucent from butter and stayed that way for 30 years. We started at 4 in the afternoon. Shelby did the apples because she is faster and because I always cut them too thick. I did the crust. The house got hot. We opened the window over the sink, and the screen was still in from last summer with a hole in the corner, and a moth got in, and neither one of us did anything about it. She remembered something I did not. "You have to hit the bowl," she said. "What Mom used to hit the side of the bowl with the knife handle. 3 times before she stirred it. Like this." And she picked up the paring knife and tapped the rim of the mixing bowl 3 times with the butt end of the handle, tap, 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 and set it down and started stirring. And I stood there with flour on my hands and could not breathe right for a second. 21 years. I had put that woman's whole kitchen back together in my head 100 times, and I had lost that. My sister had it. She was 4 years old when she started watching it, and she had it, and I did not. We talked for 4 hours. She told me about the time she skipped school in 10th grade and went down to the river, and how she sat there all afternoon getting more and more scared. Not of getting in trouble, but that I was going to finally be done. And how I pulled up on the gravel at 11 at night in my nightgown with a coat over it. And I got out, and I did not say one word to her. And I did not say one word to her the whole way home either. And she said that silence was the kindest thing anybody has ever done for her. I told her I stayed quiet because I was afraid that if I opened my mouth I was going to scream at her for 2 hours. She said she knew that. She said it was still the kindest thing. We ate the pie at 9 o'clock with the television off. Around 10, she went upstairs and came back down with her checkbook and wrote me a check for $411, which was everything she had made that week, and she put it on the table in front of me. I picked it up and looked at it. Then I opened the drawer and got a pen, and I wrote her one back for $200, and I slid it across. "Gas," I said. "Kirsten, gas." She took it. She sat down and put her hands over her face and cried without any sound at all for about a minute. And then she got up and washed her face at the kitchen sink and told me my crust was better than Mom's. Which is not true, and both of us know it. That was a real night. I need you to hear that from me clearly, because of everything that comes after, and because I know what a story like this does to a night like that when you look back at it. It makes it look like a performance. It was not a performance. She hit the bowl 3 times, whatever she had already agreed to do by then, and she had already agreed to it by then. Some part of that woman still came down the stairs on a Sunday in May and asked me if I still had the card. I have made my peace with both of those things being true. It took a while. Monday morning I got to the shop at 10 after 6. And I went to the key cabinet to get the spare for the back storage building, because we were pulling insulated panel and the padlock out there sticks. I opened the door and I ran my eye down the rows the way you do. Bottom row, last hook on the right, was empty. The paper tag was still on it. The wire was still through the hole. The key was gone. I stood there for a second, and then I patted the pocket of my shop jacket and thought about the barn coat hanging in the mudroom. And I decided I had probably taken it home in October when I got a new deadbolt put on and never brought it back. I got the panel key off hook 11, and I shut the cabinet, and I went to work. 6 weeks later, I finally understood that the Sunday we made the pie was not the end of anything. It was the night they decided they had to move faster. People ask me if I regret forgiving her. I do not. I want to be careful about that. Because it is the easy thing to say I was a fool and move on, and it is not true. Forgiving her was the right call with what I had on the table in May. She stole from me. She told me why. The why was real. And I decided that a person who has been carrying $19,000 in silence for 2 years deserved one door left open. That was not my mistake. My mistake was thinking that forgiving somebody and being safe from them were the same thing. They are not related. They are not even in the same family. You can hand a person your whole heart on a Sunday night over a pie, and it does nothing at all to change what they have already agreed to do to you in August. I did not know that yet. I had a payment plan and a locked file cabinet and a wedding in September, and I thought the hard part was behind me. 6 weeks went by. Then, on an ordinary Wednesday, I sat down at my desk to pull the fleet logs for our renewal, and I found a name in a box where that name had no business being. Our carrier wants the fleet report twice a year. Driver, unit, engine hours, hard-braking events, and every card login with a timestamp on it. It is the most boring hour of my calendar, and I do it with the door shut and a bag of pretzels. Every one of my people has a driver card. You tap it on the reader in the dash and the system knows who is in the seat. It is not there to catch anybody. It is there so that when a claim comes in and somebody says my truck was on County Highway S at 2 p.m, I can tell them it was not. Shelby had a card. Everybody in the building had a card, including Loretta, who has never driven one of those trucks in her life. That is how the software works. You buy seats, not licenses. Wednesday, the 18th of June, 1:30 in the afternoon. I was running the report for the second quarter, and I was about 11 minutes from being done with it. Unit 4. Login, 12 minutes after 9 at night, on Tuesday, the 27th of May. Card holder, Dunlap, S. Duration, 39 minutes. Distance traveled, 0.0 miles. Engine never started. I read that line the way you read a number that is wrong on an invoice. Not alarmed, annoyed. My first thought was that the reader in 4 had a bad ground and was picking up a card from a couple feet away, because that truck sits closest to the man door. Then I looked at the duration again. 39 minutes. Truck 4 had not gone out on a job since the week Dale died. It sat in the last bay against the north wall, backed in, with a tarp over the bed rail. We used it to store cut-off shafts and drops of guide angle. The battery was on a tender. The plates are current because I keep them current, and I could not tell you why. There is no reason for anybody to be in that cab. There is no reason for anybody to be in that cab for 39 minutes at 9 at night in May. And there is a 2-lens camera on the windshield mount with a microphone in it. I opened the portal. The system holds 90 days. The 27th of May was 22 days back. The clip was right there in the list with a thumbnail on it, dark, and a little gray triangle in the middle. I put the cursor on the triangle. I sat there long enough that the screen went to the saver and I had to move the mouse to bring the window back. Then I sat there long enough for it to happen a second time. I want to tell you what stopped me, because if you have ever been in this exact chair, you already know. And if you have not, it is going to sound like a lie. I was not afraid of being wrong. Being wrong would have been the best afternoon of my life. Being wrong meant a bad ground on a card reader and a woman getting worked up about nothing and a story I could tell on myself at Christmas. I was afraid of being right, because there is a version of a life where you do not press the triangle. In that version, the wedding is in September, and I stand up at the front of Zion with my sister behind me holding flowers, and my crew has a job in the morning. And Loretta retires in June like she says she is going to, and does not. And I get to be a person with a family. Pressing that triangle ends that. Not maybe. There is no clip of my sister sitting in a dead truck for 39 minutes at night that ends with me still having all of that. And I would be the one who ended it, not her. Me. My finger, my afternoon, my choice. Whatever was on there, once I had heard it, I could not put it back in a drawer and go make supper, so I did not press it. I closed the window. I finished the fleet report and I emailed it to Vern and I filed my copy. I turned off the lamp and I shut off the shop lights, Bay 3, Bay 2, Bay 1, and I chained the gate and I drove home. Grant's truck was in the driveway. He had let himself in with the spare he keeps, and he had a pork roast in the oven and the radio on the kitchen station, and he had swept the mudroom, which I had not asked anyone to do in about 4 years. There was a bag of softener salt sitting by the back step because he had noticed the tank was low the week before and had never mentioned it. He kissed the side of my head and asked me how the day was. Fine, I said. Paperwork. That was the first lie I ever told that man. I have gone back and forth on this for a long time, but I have decided that I am allowed to be grateful for it. Because from the 18th of June forward, everything I said to him in my own house was a decision instead of a reflex. He put a plate in front of me and I ate it, and I told him it was good. And it started 9 days after that. And the reason it worked is that every single piece of it looked like somebody being good to me. The first one I caught by accident. I had gone out the man door to check whether Trevor had chained the load on truck 1, and the two of them were standing on the far side of the trailer with their backs to me, and Grant was talking. Just keep an eye on her the next couple weeks, he said. She's been forgetting stuff. Nothing big, but if she gives you a number and it don't sound right, come find me before you cut steel. That is it. That is the whole thing. There was no meanness in it. I want you to understand that, because when people picture a man doing this to a woman, they picture a sneer, and there was no sneer. He sounded worried. He sounded like a man carrying something for somebody he loves and not making a production of it. If I had walked around that trailer and asked him what the hell he meant, he would have turned red and apologized and said he was out of line, and it would have been my word against a decent man's embarrassment. And Trevor, who is 26 and thinks Grant hung the moon, would have stood there watching me do it. I went back inside. The second one was the creamery bid. Cold storage package for the north dock at the creamery in Cadott. 2 vertical lift doors, an air curtain, and a leveler rebuild. $210,000 in work, which for a shop my size is the difference between a good year and a year. Bids were due Friday at 4. On Wednesday, I could not find the folder. I want to walk you through the next 40 minutes because it is instructive. You look in your bag, then you look in your bag again, which is the first sign, because nobody who is thinking clearly looks in the same bag twice. Then you go out to the truck and check the seat and under the seat, then the parts counter. Then you ask Loretta, and Loretta says she has not touched it, and you know she has not touched it, and you ask her anyway. Then you start doing math you should not be doing. You think, all right. I had it Monday. Did I have it Monday? I remember having it Monday, but I also remember thinking on Monday that I had to remember to bring it. So did I remember? Or do I remember deciding to remember? By 4 o'clock, I had a headache behind my right eye. Grant found it at 4:15. He came out of my office with it in his hand. It had been in the second drawer of my own desk, underneath a stack of manufacturer catalogs. Here is the part that did it. He did not say anything. He did not say, "Look what I found." He did not say, "Are you all right?" He set the folder on the counter in front of me, and he put his hand flat on it for a second the way you do when you are handing somebody something you know they need. And then he squeezed my shoulder once and walked back out to the shop. Not a word. If he had said one word, I could have argued with the word. You cannot argue with a hand on a folder. That night I sat in my truck in my own driveway and did something I am not proud of. I opened the calendar on my phone and went back through 6 weeks of it, looking for evidence that I was fine. 2 days later, a thing happened that I have thought about 100 times since. The plant manager at the creamery called me on a Thursday and told me my number was wrong. He said my proposal came in at $111,400 on the leveler package, and the number I gave him verbally in April was $8,900 less than that. And he did not appreciate a moving target. I drove out there and sat down across a desk from a man who was genuinely irritated with me. I opened my copy. I walked him through it line by line, and on page 3 I turned it around and showed him the deck plate replacement. 12 gauge, 22 feet. Which was not in the April number because in April we had not pulled the plate yet and had not seen the rot in the pit. He looked at it for about 10 seconds. Then he apologized, and he went out to the machine in the hall and bought me a Sprite. And he told me his wife says he gets like that in June. I sat in that parking lot afterward with the can sweating in my hand. Nothing was wrong with my head. I could hold 22 feet of 12-gauge deck plate and a date in April and a rotted pit in my mind at the same time. In a chair, in front of a man who was mad at me, and come out the other side of it with the account intact. That was the first evidence I had. I got out my notebook that night and started writing things down. Date, time, what happened, who was standing there. Dale taught me that too. He said the minute a job goes sideways, you stop trusting your memory and start keeping a log, because 6 months later in a conference room, the man with the log wins. The next 2 came from outside the building, and that is when I understood there was a shape to it. Zion Lutheran does coffee in the fellowship hall after the late service. Powdered creamer, cookies on a doily, 40 people standing around in a room with a low ceiling. Pastor Rudebush caught me at the end of the hallway with his cup in both hands. He is 64, and he has buried about a third of the people I have ever known, including my mother and including Pete. And he is not a fool, and he is not unkind. He asked me how the shop was. He asked about the wedding. Then he shifted his weight and looked at his coffee. "Kirsten," he said, "if you ever wanted to sit down with somebody, I know a woman in Eau Claire who is very good. She works with people after a loss. It does not have to be right after." I asked him what made him think of it. He said something about the season. He said summer is harder on people than they expect. He said it kindly and he said it badly, and he could not look at me while he said it. And that told me everything, because Pastor Rudebush has looked me in the eye through worse than this. Somebody had talked to him. Here's the part I have to tell you, and I would rather not. The year after Pete died, I drank, not in a movie way. Nobody found me on a floor. I did not miss a morning and I never once got in a truck. It was 3 cans of beer. Every night, alone, in the shop office with the lights off after the crew went home. For about 9 months, because the drive from the shop to the house had turned into the worst 20 minutes of the day, and 3 cans made it into 20 ordinary minutes. I stopped on my own. There was no bottom. I got to the end of a case one Tuesday and did not buy another one. And then I did not buy one the next week either. And that was it. 2 people on this earth knew about it. One is Bev Croning, who came out to the shop one evening with a plate for me because Dale had told her I was not eating, and who saw the cans in the barrel by the door, and who said one sentence to me about it. Once, and then never again in 5 years. The other one is Grant. I told him myself. We had been together maybe 2 months and we were lying in the dark, and I told him all of it, the 9 months and the 3 cans and the 20 minutes, because I did not want him to hear a version of it from somebody at the Rod and Gun and think I had hidden it. I handed it to him. He did not go looking. I put it in his hand and said, "Here, this is mine. I want you to have it. I need you to sit with that for a second, because it is the cruelest thing in this whole story, and there is no drug and no doctor that comes close to it." The second one came 4 days later. And it came from Junie. Junie Salcedo has run the diner out on 53 for 19 years, and she has been my friend for 20. She has 1 volume. She has never been careful with me in her life. She waited until the lunch rush cleared, and then she came around the counter and jerked her head at the kitchen and held the door. "Sit down," she said. "Has Grant told you that you need to see somebody?" I said no. "He came in here Tuesday," she said. "Sat right there. Very nice about it. Asked me how much you drink when you're in here. Not what do you drink. How much, like we were comparing notes on a project." I did not say anything. "I told him you have a coffee and a fish sandwich and you leave," she said. "Which is true, and he already knew it was true because he has been in here with you." She was rolling silverware while she talked, which is what she does with her hands when she is upset. "I don't know what's going on with you," she said. "That's your business. But the man who goes around asking about somebody is not the man who is worried about them. Worried people ask you. He didn't ask you. I drove home the long way, out past the fairgrounds, and I could not make it fit. And that is the thing that kept me stuck for another 2 weeks. Because what was he after? The money he could have had by asking, I would have written him a check for anything he wanted. And he had never once asked me for $1. The business was going to be half his in September, or as close to half as a corporation gets. The house had his boots in the mudroom already. Everything a man could get out of me, he was 10 weeks from getting for free. So what do you need that a wedding does not give you? I did not have the answer, but that was the first night I asked the question in those words. And once you ask a question in the right words, you are already most of the way to somewhere. We do a safety meeting the first Friday of the month, 7 in the morning, in the break room, and it takes 20 minutes and everybody hates it. We did not always do it. We started 14 months ago, because when the citation came in, that was one of the abatement items, and now it is a permanent part of my life. Loretta types the minutes. Everybody who is present signs the bottom of the page. It goes in a binder on the shelf above the coffee maker. The first Friday in July, we had a box of donuts from the Quick Trip and 7 people and a fan going because it was already warm. We went through the list. Ladder inspection tags. The new lockout procedure on the north dock at the creamery. A near miss Trevor had with a spring bar the week before that he was honest enough to report on himself. Then Loretta asked if there was anything else for the good of the order, which is a phrase she got from the Legion Hall and will not give up. And Grant raised his hand. He is not an employee. He is a subcontractor and my fiancé. And he sat in on those meetings the way you do when you are around a building. and nobody thought anything about it. "I'd like something in the minutes," he said. Loretta put her pen down. He said it plain. He said it the way you would say a hard, true thing that needed saying. He said that we had lost a man to a torsion assembly 14 months ago. He said that the owner of this company had not taken 1 full week off since. He said that she was carrying the citation, the premium, the payroll, and a wedding, and that anybody in this room could see she was worn down, and that he was not going to sit there and watch it and then be one of the people at the funeral saying somebody should have said something. Then he made his motion. He asked that it be entered in the minutes that Kirsten Halverson would not go up a ladder and would not work a torsion assembly for 6 months, and that if a job needed the owner on site, one of the crew would run the tension and she would stand on the floor. The room went quiet. I have been in that break room 10,000 times. I have never heard it like that. Trevor nodded first. He nodded fast. The way a kid does when somebody older finally says the thing he has been thinking. Then Denny nodded. Then Ray. 3 of my 4 installers, in about 4 seconds. Wendell did not nod. He also did not say anything against it. He looked down at that green lunchbox on the bench next to his knee, and he did not move his face at all, and I did not think about it again for 2 months. Loretta looked at me. Now I want to lay out the position I was in, because if you have never been inside a thing like this, you will not believe how fast the walls come in. I could refuse. If I refuse, I am the woman who, in a safety meeting, one year after killing a man with a schedule, turns down a safety measure proposed out of concern for her, in front of the crew, and every person in that room walks out of there with a story. And the story is that Kirsten is not doing well and she will not hear it. I could accept. If I accept, it is in the minutes, with signatures. There is no third door. That is the whole design of it. He did not build a trap I could walk out of. He built one where both exits were the same room. I signed. I even said something gracious. I said I appreciated it and that he was right that I had not taken a week. And 2 of them laughed, and it was over in 90 seconds. And Loretta typed it up that afternoon. 4 signatures under it. Mine on the owner line. Sitting in my own break room, in a building my husband's father put up, being handled like a piece of equipment that had come out of calibration. Now here is the thing I did not know that morning, and I am going to say it once and then let it sit. 10 weeks later, a photograph would be taken of me lying on the floor of that shop under a dock door. If that photograph had ever been real, there would have been an investigation. And the very first thing an investigator would want to know is what a 47-year-old woman with 4 employees was doing up on a torsion shaft at night by herself. And there would have been an answer waiting for him, typed, in a binder above the coffee maker, signed by 4 men. She was told not to. Everybody could see she was not right. She would not listen. After the meeting, Loretta walked into my office with a photocopy of the minutes, folded in quarters, and set it on my desk. "Put that somewhere," she said. "Not in the binder, somewhere else." I asked her why. "Don't ask me that," she said, and she went back out. The 2nd week of July, my truck went in for a wheel bearing, so I took Grant's to Eau Claire to pick up a coil of guide angle. His is a 2016 dark green, with a headache rack and a toolbox behind the cab, and about 190,000 miles on it. It smells like welding rod and Copenhagen and the pine tree hanging off the mirror, and I had ridden in it 100 times. The supply house gives you a bill of lading and you write the release number on it. I did not have a pen, so I opened the glove box. And there was no pen in the glove box. And I reached across and opened the console, and there was no pen in the console. Then I opened the pocket in the driver's door. There was a phone in it, It was a flip phone, black, no case, the kind you buy on a rack at a gas station for $30 with minutes on a card. It was plugged into a cord that ran to the lighter socket, and the cord was tucked up under the dash so it did not hang. Grant has a phone. I have called it 4 times a day for 2 years. It is in his shirt pocket, and it has a picture of a black lab on the lock screen that has been dead since 2019. This was not that phone. I picked it up. The screen came on when I moved it. It wanted a 4-digit code. The numbers keys were worn, not all of them, 4 of them, with the printing rubbed thin the way a keypad gets when the same hand hits the same buttons a few thousand times. That phone was not sitting in that door pocket for emergencies. Somebody used it. I want to tell you how long I held it. And I am going to be honest with you. It was about 30 seconds. I know because the screen dims after 30 and it dimmed in my hand. I did not try a code. I put it back in the door pocket. I put it back the same way it had been, screen up, with the cord coming over the top of it and the slack pushed to the back corner. Because I have spent my whole life putting things back the way I found them, so a customer does not know I was in his building. Then I sat in the parking lot of a steel supply house with the windows down and a forklift beeping somewhere behind me. And I had the ugliest conversation with myself I have ever had. I am going to give it to you the way it actually went, and not the way I would like it to have gone. If I try the code and there is nothing on that phone, then I am a woman who went through a man's truck 9 weeks before her wedding. I have to carry that, and I have to decide whether to tell him, and either way it is in the house now. And if I try the code and there is something on that phone, then it is over. The wedding is over. September is over. The house goes back to being a house where I make one plate, 52 years old, 57, 61, 68, in that house, alone, with the tank running low and nobody noticing. That is the whole thing. That is the entire reason. I am 47 years old. I buried a husband at 42. I am not brave. I did not want to be right, and I did not want to be strong, and I did not want a story to tell. I wanted to stay. Anybody who has been alone in a house after being not alone in it knows exactly what I am talking about, and everybody else thinks that a person in my chair opens the phone. I have made my peace with that too. I got a pen off the guy at the will call window, wrote the release number on the lading, loaded my coil, and drove back to Chippewa Falls. On the way I stopped at Junie's because it was 1 o'clock and I had not eaten. I sat at the counter. I had a fish sandwich and a coffee. Junie did not ask me one question. She filled my cup twice, and once she stood in front of me for a second with the pot in her hand, and I could feel her deciding. And then she went and wiped down the pie case instead. That is what a friend is, incidentally. Somebody who can see the whole thing sitting on your face and still let you eat your sandwich in peace. That night, Grant asked if I got the coil all right, and if I found a pen in the truck. "I borrowed one off the counter guy," I said. He nodded and reached past me for the salt. "Yeah," he said. "That truck's a mess," and he took his right thumb and rubbed the knuckle of his left ring finger. 2 passes, I saw it, and this time I did not put a story on top of it, and I did not decide what it meant. I put it in the notebook when I went upstairs. Date, time, what happened, who was standing there. 2 things happened in the same week at the end of July, and I am going to put them next to each other on purpose, because that is how I got them. The first one was a Tuesday, and it was laundry. Grant's canvas coat had been hanging on the hook in the mudroom since the middle of June with a grease stain down the front of it. I finally took it off the hook to wash it, and I did what you do with a work coat. which is go through the pockets so you do not put a pencil through the drum. Chapstick. A 1/4-inch nut driver. 3 receipts. 2 of them were gas. The third one was from a motel out on Highway 25 in Menominee. 2 nights. 1 room, paid cash, dated the 24th and 25th of April. The 24th and 25th of April, he was in Rice Lake on a structural package for a hog barn. He told me that at the time, and he told me about it again when he got back, in detail, including the fact that the contractor had the anchor bolts set wrong. Rice Lake is north. Menominee is southwest. They are not on the way to each other. They are not on the way to anything from each other. I stood in the mudroom with a coat over my arm and that piece of paper in my hand for a while. Then I did not do a single thing about it. I folded it in half. I put it in an envelope from the drawer by the phone. I walked it out to the shop the next morning and I put the envelope in the bottom drawer of the file cabinet in my office, in the back, behind the personnel folders. I want to be clear that this was not strength. I was not building a case. I was doing the same thing I did with the phone in the door pocket. I was putting it somewhere it would still exist so that I did not have to be the one holding it. The second thing was Thursday. Shelby drove me down to Eau Claire for my final fitting. The dress is not a wedding dress the way you are picturing. It is champagne-colored, tea-length with 3/4 sleeves, and it cost $410 off a rack in a shop next to a nail salon. I am 47, and it is a second marriage, and I was not going to stand in front of Pastor Rudebush in a train. The woman put me in the fitting room and did the sleeves, and then went to get pins. Shelby did the back. There are 11 covered buttons up the back of that dress, and she did every one of them from the bottom, and her hands were warm, and she was telling me about a woman at the salon who fell asleep under the dryer. Then she stepped back to look, and she stopped talking. I watched it happen in the mirror. She put her fingers over her mouth. Her chin went. She got that hitch on the way up, the double breath, the one she has had since she was 7, and it caught her sideways, and she turned around fast toward the wall so I would not see her face. "Sorry," she said. "God. Sorry." I said her name. "If Mom could see you," she said into the wall, and she did not finish it. She got herself back in about 40 seconds. She wiped under both eyes with the sides of her thumbs, and she laughed at herself, and she came back over and started on the buttons again from the top so we could get the dress off before the woman came back with the pins. Now I am going to tell you the truest thing I know about my sister, and then I am going to leave it alone. I do not know if that was real. I have gone at it from every angle a person can go at a thing. I have laid it next to everything I learned afterward, including dates, including a recording, including a transcript, and I still cannot get to the bottom of it. And what I have decided, and I am not asking you to agree, is that it was real. I think a person can cry, honestly, in a fitting room, over a sister she has already agreed to have killed. I think both of those live in the same body at the same time, and neither one of them cancels the other one out. I think that is not a monster. I think it is worse than a monster. Because a monster you could see coming. We got the dress in the bag and we walked out to the parking lot. She stopped by the car to answer a text. She was standing on the passenger side with her thumbs going and her head down, and she smiled at that screen, and I saw it. It was not the smile she uses in this family. I have known every smile that woman has since she was 4 years old, and that one was not in the collection. Vern Ostrander called me on the first Monday in August. Vern has written every policy this company has carried for 20 years. General liability, the fleet, the umbrella, the building, and the personal term life I took out on myself after Pete died. He is 62. He wears short-sleeve dress shirts. And he calls to confirm things because his father taught him to call to confirm things. Kirsten, I've got your beneficiary change here, he said. I just want to read it back to you before I send it in. I did not say what. I want you to notice that, because it is the first thing I did in this entire story that I would call skill. 8 weeks earlier, I would have said, what? What comes out of your mouth and then the other person adjusts? I said, go ahead and read it. He read it. Change of beneficiary, personal term policy, face amount $1.5 million, current primary beneficiary, Shelby Ann Dunlap. Sister, requested new primary beneficiary, a trust, named, established in June, with 2 named trustees. He read me the name of the trust twice because he thought I might not have heard it. Then he said the sentence that opened the whole thing up, and he said it as a piece of small talk. That's a 2-grantor arrangement, he said, the kind people set up ahead of a marriage. My wife and I did one. I told him I needed to look at my copy and that I would call him back. I hung up and I sat there. Then I drove home in the middle of a work day, which I do about once a year, and I laid 3 pieces of paper out on my kitchen table. The fax image of the co-op check, the recorded mortgage from the courthouse, and the beneficiary change form he emailed me while I was driving. 3 signatures with my name on them, none of them mine. The check the hook on the H. The mortgage the hook on the H, plus a middle initial that has not been in my hand since the year I got married. The change form, no hook, straight leg, heavy pressure, so heavy the pen dug in, and the last letter, the N, ran long, with a tail that went off flat to the right instead of stopping. That is not one person's forgery getting better. That is 2 different hands. I sat at that table with my hands flat on it, and I did the arithmetic out loud in an empty kitchen. 1 person took money. That was May. That was a woman in a hole with a card at 29.9%. But there is no hole a person is in that gets fixed by taking my life insurance off my sister and putting it in a trust with 2 names on it. You do not need a trust to steal. A trust is not for taking something. A trust is a thing you build to hold something after it comes to you. It is a set of instructions for money that has not arrived yet. They were not trying to get my money. They were arranging where it would go when it came. And once you see it in those words, everything else on that table changes shape underneath you. The mortgage was not theft. The mortgage was cash, up front, out of a building that would be worthless to them the second an insurance company started asking questions, taken early, while nobody was looking at anything. Money taken out ahead. Money routed to land somewhere afterward. There is only one thing that goes in the middle of those 2. I got up and I ran cold water over my wrists at the kitchen sink for about a minute, which is a thing Bev Croning told me to do the year after Pete. And it works. And I do not know why. The kitchen clock is loud. I had never noticed that in 11 years in that house. I stood at the sink with cold water running over both wrists and listened to a clock and looked out at a bird feeder I had not filled since June. Then I called Vern back. I need a favor, and I need you to not ask me about it, I said. He said all right. Don't process the change. Don't decline it either. Leave it sitting exactly where it is, in whatever pile it is in, and if anybody calls to ask why it's slow, tell them it's slow. Vern was quiet for a second. I could hear his chair. Kirsten, he said. Are you safe? I don't know yet, I said. That's why I need you to leave it sitting there. Okay, he said. And then he said one more thing, and I have always liked him for it. For the record, I would have called you no matter what, he said. That form was signed in front of a notary in Bloomer. Same one as something else you had. I noticed it and it bothered me. That's why I picked up the phone. I asked him what he wanted me to do about that. Nothing, he said. I'm telling you so you know somebody besides you saw it. I hung up, and I finally understood why I needed to know who called Vern's office to ask what was taking so long, because whoever made that call was the one who was counting on the money. I played it on the 12th of August, at 11 o'clock at night, alone in the shop office with one bank of lights on over Bay 1. Before I played it, I did something that took me 20 minutes. Because the first question people ask me about the rest of this is whether I was allowed to. I pulled the bottom drawer of the file cabinet and I took out my sister's personnel folder, application, tax forms, a copy of her driver's license, expired, and behind those, the signature page off the handbook I rewrote after Dale. Page 4 is the camera page. In cab video and audio recording, company vehicles, continuous operation, no expectation of privacy in the cab, recordings are company property, review at the discretion of the owner. Her signature is on the bottom of the last page in blue ink, with the date next to it in her own handwriting. She signed it in my kitchen with a plate on her knee and the television going, and she asked me what it was for, and I told her it was so the insurance company could not sue us. And she said, okay. In this state, a recording of a conversation is legal if one of the people in it has agreed to it, or if somebody gave permission ahead of time. That is the whole rule. It is not a loophole. It is the reason a business can put a camera in a truck at all. My sister gave that permission in writing, 14 months earlier, sitting in a recliner, for a piece of equipment she had forgotten existed. I sat there with that page under the lamp for a while, then I put it back in the folder, and I put the folder in the drawer, and I went to the computer. The file is 39 minutes and 4 seconds. The picture is almost nothing. The cab light was off. There is a wash of yellow across the top from the shop's security light coming in through the windshield, and 2 shapes in the seats, and every so often the shapes move. The audio is very good. That is what you pay for. You hear a door close. You hear the springs in the bench take weight. You hear the seatbelt buckle swing and hit the door pillar, which is a sound I have heard 10,000 times and which I will hear for the rest of my life. Then my sister laughs. I have to tell you about that laugh, because it is the first thing on the tape, and it is the thing that took the top of my head off. And it happens before either one of them says a single word that means anything. I know all of that woman's laughs. I know the polite one she gives customers on the phone. I know the loud one she does at the fish fry when somebody says something about the Packers. I know the one from when she was 9, which she still has, which sounds like a hiccup. That was none of those. It was low. And it was easy. And it went on a second longer than it needed to. It was the laugh of a person who is comfortable, who is not being watched, who is in the middle of something that has been going on long enough to be relaxed inside. 2 years is what that laugh was. And then they talked. They talked this way people talk who have talked in that truck before. Nothing was explained, because nothing needed explaining. No names got introduced. They picked up threads I had never held either end of. They talked about the place in Menominee, and how the woman at the desk knows him now, and whether that is a problem. And they decided it was not. They talked about my crew. Grant said Trevor is going to be a good hand in about 4 years if somebody keeps him off the phone. My sister agreed with him. They said it about a kid who works for me, and it made the floor of that office feel 2 inches lower than it is. They talked about the wedding the way you talk about a dentist appointment, not with hatred. That is what I could not get over. There was no hatred anywhere on that tape. There was scheduling. At 22 minutes she said something about her cheek being cold, and he ran the truck heater off the battery for a while, and then he shut it off because he did not want to draw it down. I want you to hear that. He was careful with my battery. At 29 minutes, there is a lull. You can hear the security light buzzing. You can hear the tarp on the bed rail moving because there was a fan on in the shop. And then, at 30 minutes and 5 seconds, my sister says, "It's just September." I stopped the file. I did not stop it because of what came next, because I had not heard what came next yet. I stopped it because I recognized her tone. It is the exact tone she used at the kitchen sink in May, with a dish towel in her hands, asking me how long a policy has to be open before they cannot fight it. Casual, sideways, thrown over a shoulder. I got up and got a glass of water I did not want, and I stood at the window over the parts bench for a minute, and then I came back and sat down and put the cursor back on it. The counter said 30 minutes and 12 seconds when I left, and it still said 30 minutes and 12 seconds when I came back. I looked at that number for a long time before I pressed it. From 30 minutes on, it is 4.5 minutes long, and I have heard it enough times that I could type it out for you from memory, and I am not going to, because you do not need all of it. Here is what matters. She said the policy was 4 years in and past the window where they can fight it. She said the number out loud, 1.5. He asked her about the trust and why the agent had not moved on it yet, and she said Vern is slow. Vern has been slow his whole life. And Grant said something about not calling to push it because pushing it is how people remember you. Then he asked how long after. She said a straight death claim on an accident is usually 30 to 60 days once the death certificate is issued. And she said it like a person who had read it somewhere and had gone back and read it again. Then there was a lull. You can hear the security light. You can hear him shift his weight on the bench seat. And then Grant said, "It's just September." No, that is wrong. She said that, at 30 minutes and 5 seconds. He said the next one, "I am telling you that mistake on purpose, because it is the only thing in this entire account that I have ever gotten confused about, and it is because of what he said next and what it did to the inside of my skull." At 34 minutes and 1 second, my fiancé said this. Last one wasn't hard. That is it. 4 words. He did not say them dramatically. He said them the way a man says a thing about work when somebody is worried about a job coming up. Reassuring. A little bored. I stopped it. I went back 10 seconds and played it again. I went back and played it again. I played those 4 words 11 or 12 times. At some point, I realized my hand was doing it on its own and I was not deciding to do it anymore. Then I sat back in the chair. There is only one previous one. There is not a business deal previous one. There is not a bar fight previous one. Everything else in that 39 minutes is money and dates and one woman's death. And inside that conversation there is only one thing a previous one can be. I turned my head and I looked at the coffee can on the corner of my desk. I got up and I dumped the pens out of it onto the desk blotter, and I took the plate out and I set it under the lamp. Now I need you to understand who was in that room. For 14 months I had picked that thing up as a widow picks up a folded flag. It was the object that proved what I had done. I never once looked at it. I held it. That night, for the first time, I looked at it as a person who has installed torsion hardware since she was 25 years old. A center-bearing plate carries the shaft at the middle of the door. It is cast. It bolts to the header, and the shaft runs through a bearing in the middle of it. On this style, the shaft is held by 2 set screws that come in through the collar and bite down onto the steel. When set screws back out over years from vibration, there is a signature. Both screws walk out together, a little at a time. The drive recess gets rounded and polished, because nothing has been in it, and the shaft under them shows a ring, a burnished band all the way around, because the shaft has been turning inside a loose grip for a long time. That is what fatigue looks like. I have pulled 100 of them. Under that lamp, both set screws had a bright step cut into one wall of the recess. A step, not a rounding. That is what a driver tip does when it slips out of a screw under torque, in one direction, on purpose. And the shaft stub was not burnished all the way around. There was one short scratch, about 3/4 of an inch, running straight along the axis. Not around it, along it, a shaft that turns loose in a collar for years scores in a circle. A shaft that gets pulled out of a collar once, sideways, scores in a line. I had been holding the answer in a coffee can on my desk for 14 months with my pens in it. I put the plate down on the desk because my hands had started to go, and I did not want to drop it. Then the second thing came, and the second thing is worse, and it arrived about 90 seconds later while I was standing there. Dale was not supposed to be at the co-op that day. My name was in that row on the board for the 18th. He came into the office the afternoon before and told me he would take it, because they were setting my mother's headstone at 9 the next morning, and he was not going to be the reason I missed it. I told him no twice. He erased my name himself and wrote as in, there was exactly one other person in the building who saw it happen, because she was standing at that board with the marker in her hand when he did it. Loretta Zemer has come through that door at 5 o'clock in the morning for 31 years. I have never asked her to. There is nothing for her to do at 5. The books are the same at 5 as they are at 7. She started doing it when Pete's father was alive because she had a husband who worked second shift, and she liked the house better when it was empty, and then her husband died in 2002, and she never changed the time. That morning the office light was on, and the door was not locked. I did not hear her come in. I was in my chair with my coat still on. It was 5:05, and I had been sitting there since about 2. The plate was on the desk in front of me on a paper towel. She stopped in the doorway. She did not say what happened. She did not say, "Oh my God." She did not ask me if I was all right, which is the single kindest thing anybody did for me that whole year, because the answer was no, and then I would have had to say it out loud at 5 in the morning. She hung her coat on the second hook. She filled the carafe at the utility sink and she rinsed out 2 cups, and she got the filters out of the cupboard where they have been since 1994, and she started the machine. Then she poured one and put it down in front of me, on the desk, next to the paper towel. She pulled the other chair around, the metal one with the vinyl seat, and she sat down facing me. And then she just sat there. I want to say something about that, because it is the closest thing to a religious experience I have ever had inside a metal building. There is a kind of person who cannot be in a room with somebody else's pain without doing something to it. They want to fix it, or name it, or tell you about the time it happened to their cousin. It is not malice. Most of them mean well, but what they are actually doing is asking you to manage them. Loretta drank her coffee. For 40 minutes, the sky went from black to that flat gray you get in the middle of August. The security light on the corner shut itself off. A semi went by out on the county road and downshifted at the curve. At about 10 of 6, she got up, walked over, and turned the deadbolt on the office door from the inside, and came back and sat down. Then she said one thing. "Your mother used to sit in that chair," she said. "She waited too long, too, and that is when I came apart. I am not going to describe it. It went on a while. She did not touch me, and she did not say anything else. And when it was done, she handed me a paper towel off the roll on the parts bench. And I blew my nose and I told her everything, all of it. The fuel card, the check, the mortgage, the notary, the phone in the door pocket, the motel receipt in the bottom drawer. The beneficiary trust with 2 names on it, the tape, the 4 words, the 2 set screws, and the 18th of the month when Dale erased my name off that board and wrote his in. It took about 50 minutes, and she did not interrupt me one time. When I was done, she got up and went out to her desk and came back with a brown accordion file with a rubber band around it. The kind you buy at the drugstore. She put it on the desk. Inside it was a copy of everything. The fleet statements. Going back 3 years. Both sides of the co-op check. The recorded mortgage and the satisfaction. The deposit history against every co-op invoice. The safety minutes with the 4 signatures. Bank statements with things circled in pencil. All of it in date order, with a sheet on the front in her handwriting listing what was in it and when she put it in. You told me to do whatever I wanted, she said. I asked her how long she had been building it. Since the day you told me she was the only thing you had left of your mother, she said. I sat there with my hands on that file. I need somebody who knows how to talk to the police, I said. And Loretta Zemer, who is 68 years old and has retired every Friday for 6 years and has never once done it, sat back down in the metal chair and picked up her coffee. No, she said. First, you need somebody who knows how to talk to you. The police can wait until 7. We drank the rest of the pot. At 20 to 7, the truck started pulling in, and we heard Trevor's radio through the wall and somebody laughing out in the lot, and the building came alive around us the way it does every day, whether or not anything is wrong. At 6:40, somebody knocked on the office door. I looked up through the glass. Wendell Traxler was standing there, and his hands were empty. By 6 in the morning on the 13th of August, I knew everything. I knew they were sleeping together and had been for 2 years. I knew they had my building mortgaged behind my back and put back. I knew there was a trust with 2 names on it waiting to catch $1.5 million. And I knew, standing in my own office with a piece of cast iron on a paper towel, that Dale Croning went off that ladder because somebody put a driver in 2 set screws. Knowing is not the same as proving. I found that out fast, and I found it out the hard way. What I had was a piece of hardware that had been sitting in a coffee can with my pens in it for 14 months, and 39 minutes of 2 people who never once said the word out loud. 4 words is not a confession. 4 words is a defense attorney with an afternoon and a clean shirt. I needed one of them to say the whole thing, in a sentence, to somebody, on purpose. And I had no idea on earth how a woman who hangs doors for a living makes that happen. Then a man who owed me nothing knocked on my office door with his hands empty, and told me to sit down. 4 years. And I had never once seen that man come through the door without that lunchbox. He carries it because he does not eat out. He does not eat out because a plate lunch is $11, and he sends money to a daughter in Rice Lake who is 31 and does not call him. He has told me that twice in 4 years, both times while we were waiting on a fitter. No lunchbox means he was not planning to stay. Loretta stood up and started to gather her cups. "Ma'am," Wendell said, "she can stay. I'd rather she stayed." I asked him what was wrong. He looked at the key cabinet on the wall for a second, and then he said, "Kirsten, I need you to sit down." He had never used my first name in 4 years. I sat down. He did not sit. He stood with his back almost against the door frame and his hands hanging, and he told it in order. Slow. Going back over parts of it. The way a man tells a thing he has rehearsed in a truck for 10 days and still cannot get to come out right. 10 days earlier, Grant asked him to have a beer at the Rod and Gun. They have had beers before. Grant hires him now and then for a weekend of stair rail or a gate. It was not strange. They talked about a hay elevator job. They talked about the brewers. And somewhere in the second beer, Grant started asking questions about doors. Not welding. Doors. He asked whether an overhead door ever comes down on its own. He asked what makes one do that. He asked. And Wendell repeated this part twice, whether a person could tell afterward. Wendell told him that a sectional door is held up by a torsion assembly, and that if the assembly lets go, the door comes down like a guillotine, and that a good investigator can absolutely tell, and a bad one probably cannot. Then Grant put a number on the bar. $15,000, cash, for a door coming down at the right time. Wendell said he did not say anything at all. He said he looked at the bar mat for a while, and then he got up and put a 10 under his glass and walked out. And that is where he stopped. He stood in my office door and stopped, and he could not get to the next part for probably 15 seconds. Loretta said, "Wendell." And he said, "He talked to me on the way out to the lot. He was following me. And he said, if Kurt could do it, you can do it." The office got very quiet. I asked him who Kurt is. Kurt Vane, 41 years old, superior. He and Wendell were on the same crew for 2 seasons before Wendell went away. And they were in the same institution for 11 months of the 6 years. And Kurt got out early and stayed out. Wendell said he is not stupid and he is not crazy and he is not violent. He's just for hire, Wendell said. That's all he is. He's a man you can rent. Loretta had not moved the whole time he was talking. She was standing by the coffee maker with a cup in her hand that she had not once drunk out of. I asked him whether Kurt Vane had ever done work in Chippewa County. He said he did not know. Then he said the other thing. And he had clearly been carrying this one for 10 days, too. "I know he was down here," he said. "Last spring, 1.5 years ago, he put a bumper on my brother's Silverado in Bloomer. I remember because he wanted cash and my brother had to go to the machine. Bloomer, 14 months. I did not say anything for a second. The arithmetic was doing itself in front of me, and I did not want any of it out loud in a room with a glass panel in the door. I asked him why he waited 10 days. He looked at me and he told me the truth. And I have never in my life had somebody hand me a truer answer to a question. "Because I'm on paper," he said. "Ma'am, you don't understand what that is. There isn't a version of me talking to police where I come out the other side the same. Doesn't matter what I say, doesn't matter if I'm right. I go in that building. I'm not a guy who reported something. I'm a guy with a record who's involved." He said the 10 days had been going about like you would expect. He said he would get it settled at 8 at night and it would come back around at 3 in the morning. "And then Tuesday, I was standing at the bench," he said. "And I thought, if she goes and I didn't say nothing, that's the same as me doing it." I said his name. "Dale's the reason I got this job," he said. "And Dale was the only one in this building called me Wendell instead of the new guy. 2 years. I ain't sitting on it. I need you to understand what that did to me, sitting in that chair. For 14 months I had been the woman who got Dale Croning killed with a schedule. And here was a man standing in my doorway with his own freedom lying on the table in front of him, telling me he was going to do it anyway, because Dale had used his name. Then he put his hands in his pockets and he said, 'So, what do we do?' We went to the county on Friday morning. I want to be careful with this part, because there is a version of this story where the small-town sheriff is a fool with his boots on the desk. And that is not what happened. And telling it that way would be a lie that costs somebody else something later. We got an investigator named Kirshner. 50s, reading glasses, a legal pad, a conference room with a laminate table and a whiteboard that had a phone number on it from some other case. He gave me 40 minutes, and he did not once look at the clock. I brought the accordion file. I brought a thumb drive with the clip on it. I brought the plate in a paper grocery bag because I did not know any better yet. He listened to the 39 minutes twice. The second time, he put one earbud in and turned his chair sideways and closed his eyes. And he wrote maybe 9 words down the whole time. And I watched him and thought, this is a man who is actually hearing it. Then he took the earbud out and set it on the table, and he told me the truth, slowly, in order. And he did not soften it, and he did not pretend. He said, on the tape, nobody says a name, nobody says a method, nobody says a date. He said a jury does not get to hear what you and I hear in it, because a jury hears it once, cold, from a man in a suit who has spent 3 weeks getting ready to explain that his client was talking about a hay elevator job. He said 4 words. He said the affair is not a crime. He said the forgeries are a real case, a good case, and he would take that case today, uttering a forged writing, 4 counts, maybe more. But he said, and he was right, that a forgery charge does not stop anything. It gets a woman arrested, and it gets her lawyer to tell her to be quiet, and everybody involved goes underground for 18 months. And then what? Then the plate. He picked up the bag. He did not take it out. Where has this been? He said. I told him. 14 months. On my desk, in a coffee can with my pens in it. He set it down very gently. He said it was not evidence anymore, in the way that word gets used in a courtroom. He said the chain was gone, and that a defense expert would say that a cast part that spent 14 months on a working shop desk got its marks any of about 100 ways. He said it in a tone that made it clear he was not happy about saying it. And then he told me the thing that actually mattered, which is the thing I did not know I had come there to learn. Ma'am, he said, the piece you're describing to me, the hiring of it, that's not mine. I asked him what that meant. He said, if a man in this county pays another man in this county to kill somebody in this county, that is his case. But a phone call is not a place. A payment is not a place. He said the second anybody uses a cell phone or moves cash across a state line to set a thing like that up, it stops being a county matter and it becomes a different kind of case entirely, in a different building, under a different statute. He said Superior is 30 minutes from Duluth. He said Duluth is Minnesota. Then he said, I can take the paper, I can't take the rest of it, and if I open a file today on the paper, whoever's doing the rest of it will hear about it by Tuesday, because this is Chippewa County. I asked him what I was supposed to do. He took a card out of his shirt pocket, and he turned it over, and he wrote a name and a phone number on the back of it in ballpoint. He said he had worked with him on a case out of Bloomer 2 years ago. Then he did one more thing, and it is the only reason I did not leave that building with nothing. He said, Are you living in the house with him? I said yes. Then I'm going to tell you 2 things, and you can do what you want with them. He said, 1. Don't change anything. Not one thing. Don't get cold, don't get warm, don't get religion. People like this read a change in a room the way you'd read a crack in a wall. 2. Whatever you decide. Decide it this week. I asked him why. He tapped the accordion file with 2 fingers. Because somebody in here is on a schedule, he said. And it's got a month on it. We came out into the parking lot and it was 90 degrees and the blacktop was soft. I sat in the truck with Wendell in the passenger seat and neither one of us said anything for a while. I got out my phone and turned the card over and looked at the back of it. R. Ortiz. And a number with an area code I did not recognize. And under it, in Kirshner's handwriting, 402 Graham Avenue. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has a resident agency in Eau Claire at 402 Graham Avenue. I want to say what that is. Because everybody has a picture in their head and the picture is wrong. It is not a compound. There is no gate. It is an office in a building downtown with other offices in it, on a street with parking meters and a bakery on the corner, 20 minutes from my shop. I called the number on Monday and told a woman I had information about somebody trying to hire a man to kill me. She did not gasp, and she did not put me on hold. She asked me 3 questions and told me somebody would call me back. And somebody called me back in 40 minutes. I went in on Wednesday, the 20th of August at 10 in the morning. The waiting room has 4 gray plastic chairs, a low table, and 3 magazines that were 11 months old. I sat there for 22 minutes with the accordion file on my knees. There was a clock. A man came out with a lanyard and went past me to the door and said good morning and left. That is what it is like. Nobody tells you that. You sit in a chair with a folder in a room with a clock in it and wait for the rest of your life to start. Special Agent Ruben Ortiz came out at 10:22, 44 years old. A dress shirt with the sleeves rolled twice, no tie, and a paper cup of coffee that he set down and did not drink. We went into a room with a table. I gave him everything and I talked for about an hour. He did not take a single note for the first 20 minutes. Which unsettled me until I understood he was listening to the shape of it first, and would go back for the parts. Then he put the earbuds in and listened to the whole 39 minutes without stopping at once. When it was done, he took them out, and he wound the cord around 2 fingers, and he sat there for a second. "Okay," he said. "Let me tell you what I'm looking at. And then I've got 3 questions. Here is what he told me, and I am giving it to you the way he gave it to me, because it is the piece nobody understands until it lands on their own table. He said the crime is not the killing. He said there is a federal statute that makes it a crime by itself to use interstate commerce. And interstate commerce includes a cell phone, a text message, a wire transfer, and a person driving across a state line with the intent that a murder be committed for money. He said the offense is complete when the agreement is made and 1 step is taken toward it. He said the person does not have to die. Nobody has to get hurt. Nobody has to even show up. He said the penalty moves in steps, and he counted them off on his fingers. If nobody is hurt, up to 10 years. If somebody is hurt, up to 20. And if somebody dies, life. Then he leaned forward and said the sentence I have never gotten out of my head. "Ma'am, you're describing 2 cases to me," he said. "There's the one they're planning, and there's the one they already did. The second one is the expensive one. I asked him if he believed me about Dale. He said, 'I believe you have a reason to think it. That's not the same as me believing it. And it's not supposed to be. What I can tell you is that I know how to find out.' Then the 3 questions. The first one was whether anyone besides Wendell Traxler and Loretta Zemer knew I had come to that building. I said no. The second one was how long I could keep living in that house without changing how I acted. I said I did not know. He said think about it and give me a number later. And I said, September 13th, and he wrote that down. The third one he asked slower. "How long are you willing to let this run?" he said, "before we stop it." I asked him what that meant. He said that what I had was a woman who cannot be charged with a conversation, and a man who cannot be charged with a bar tab, and a piece of iron in a grocery bag. He said if they took it, they would get 2 forgery counts and a lot of embarrassment, and everybody would walk. He said the only version of this that ends with the door closed is a version where the two of them say the whole thing. Out loud, on purpose, to somebody they think is going to do it, and then hand that person money. And that takes time, he said. It takes weeks. It takes them getting comfortable, which means you go home tonight and you make supper and you say goodnight to him. And you do that for a while. I sat in that chair and looked at a paper cup of coffee that had not been touched. Until when? I said. Until they pay, he said. They brought Wendell in on Friday the 22nd. There is a form. There is always a form. It is a cooperating witness agreement, and it lays out what he is agreeing to do, what the government will and will not do for him, and what happens to him if he lies. Ortiz went through it line by line at a table with a woman from the United States Attorney's Office sitting in, and Wendell asked exactly one question the entire time. He asked whether this would put a mark on his supervision. The woman said it would not, and that they would notify his supervising officer so that if he had to travel or be somewhere at an odd hour, it would not come back on him. Wendell nodded. He said, "Okay, 4 or 5 times, spaced out, the way a man does when he is agreeing with a thing he is still afraid of." Then he picked up the pen. His hand shook so badly the first signature went up out of the line and over into the printed text. He stopped. He put the pen down. He wiped his palm on his jeans. Nobody in that room said one word. Ortiz turned a page over and slid a fresh copy across without any comment at all, which I thought was a decent thing to do. He signed it the second time, and it was fine. I sat against the wall in a chair by the door, and I watched a 52-year-old man sign his name twice because he could not hold a pen, and I understood exactly what I had done to him. I had not asked him to be brave. He had walked in and offered, and I had said yes, and there is a difference in a court of law, and no difference at all at 3 a.m. Afterward, we stood in the hall by a water fountain, and I told him he could still stop. I meant it. I want that clear. If he had said the word, I would have driven him home and figured out something else, and I have no idea on this earth what that something else would have been. He said, I signed it. Quit asking me. Then he said one more thing. You know what the worst part is? He said. It ain't the danger. It's I gotta go be friendly with him. I got to sit there and act like it's fine. I said I knew. He said, Yeah, I guess you do. Here is what they built, and I am going to lay it out because I understood almost none of it at the time, and it took me a while to see how careful it was. Wendell would call Grant and say he had thought about it and he was out, but that he knew somebody. A guy from up north. Somebody he did time around. He would not vouch for him, and he would not be in the middle of it, and he wanted nothing, not $1. That last part was the important part. Ortiz was very firm about it. Wendell had to want nothing. A man who takes a finder's fee is a co-conspirator on a witness stand, and a defense lawyer will spend a day and a half making a jury look at that instead of at the tape. The guy from up north would be an agent, and the agent would never, ever propose anything. He would sit there. He would let them bring it. Every time they wanted something, they would have to say it out loud themselves. Ortiz told me that twice, on 2 different days, and I finally asked him why he kept saying it. He said, because the day this ends up in front of a jury, the only question in the room is going to be whether we made them do it or they did it. And I want to be able to play a tape where they say every single ugly thing first. Then it was my turn to get instructions. They were not complicated. They were the hardest thing I have ever done. Go home, cook, do the wedding errands, confirm the chairs with the rod and gun, take the dress out of the bag and hang it in the spare room where he can see it. Do not fight. Do not go quiet. Do not clean anything you would not normally clean. And Ortiz said one thing that I have thought about ever since. Do not act better, he said. Act the same. If you are usually a little short with him on Thursday nights, be a little short with him on Thursday nights. People try to overcorrect into pleasant, and pleasant is the thing that gets noticed. That night I went home and made a pot of chili because it was the 22nd of August and cool for the first time in a month. He came in at 6:30 with a bag of ice and a fan he had picked up for the spare room because he said that room gets hot. We ate. We watched 40 minutes of a ball game. He fell asleep in the chair by 9, and I sat on the couch across from him and looked at a man with his mouth open and a hand hanging off the armrest. 3 weeks earlier, I would have put a blanket on him. I got up, turned off the lamp, and went to bed. I turned the plate over to Ortiz on the 25th of August, and I am going to tell you exactly how. Because this is the part where people get it wrong in stories, and then everybody in the comments has to explain fingerprints to each other. He did not want it in a grocery bag. He had a paper evidence sack, the brown kind with the printed block on the front and a seal strip across the top. Paper, not plastic, because a greasy cast part in plastic will sweat, and that is bad for everything. Before he sealed it, he asked me to say, out loud, for a recording, 3 things: where it came from, who had touched it, where it had been every day for 14 months. So I said it. I said the county released it to my carrier after the investigation, and my carrier returned it to me. I said it sat on the back left corner of my desk in a Folgers can with pens in it. I said the can sits in an unlocked office in an unlocked shop where 7 people work. I said I have picked it up more times than I can count, and I have never once worn a glove. I said my fingerprints are all over that part, and so are Loretta's. Probably. And so are anybody's who ever reached into that can for a pen. Ortiz nodded and wrote it down. And then he had me sign the block on the front, and he signed under me, and he wrote the date and time. Then he explained something to me that I had gotten backwards. You keep apologizing for handling it, he said. Nobody is going to try this case on that part. He said what the part is good for is that it tells a laboratory exactly where to look, and it tells them what to compare it against. Then he asked whether the door hardware from the co-op job was still around. It was in a steel bin behind my shop, under a tarp, with the rest of what came off that opening. Because after a fatality, you do not throw anything away, and then a year goes by, and nobody has told you that you can. The shaft was in there, both spring cones, the cable drums, the other bearing plate. They took all of it on the 27th out of my yard, off a chain of custody that started in my presence with photographs. The report came back 8 days later. I have read it 4 times, and I could not tell you what most of it says. But the part that matters is 3 sentences long, on both set screws. The drive recess showed a fresh deformation on one wall, consistent with a driver tip loaded in the loosening direction, and inconsistent with progressive vibratory loosening. The shaft showed a single axial score, and no circumferential burnishing. And the residue in the recesses was inconsistent with 14 months of oxidation. That last one was the one Ortiz circled. He explained it to me in the parking lot. He said if those screws had backed out slowly over years, everything in those recesses would have aged together at the same rate. It had not. Something had gone in there and cut bright metal not long before that door came down. They opened Dale Croning's file back up on the 5th of September. And then Ortiz told me what that meant for me. And it is the worst thing anybody asked of me in this entire year. Nobody could know. Not Bev. Especially not Bev. He said if the widow knows, the widow tells her sister, and her sister tells somebody at church, and this county is 14,000 people, and it would be in the rod and gun by Thursday. So on the 7th of September, I sat in the third pew at Zion Lutheran, one seat over from Bev Croning, the way I have every Sunday for 5 years. After the service, she took my hand in the aisle. She does this. She has done it since the funeral. She said what she says. She said she does not blame me. She said it was an accident. She said Dale was too confident with a torsion assembly, and she had been telling him so for 20 years and he never listened to her one time. And she patted the back of my hand twice and let go and went to get coffee. I stood in the aisle of that church, and I said, "Thank you." I had a laboratory report in a drawer at home that said her husband was killed. I had known it for 3 days. I lied to a lot of people that month. I lied to my fiancé every night at supper. I lied to my sister on the phone about the flowers. I lied to my own crew about why I was gone on a Wednesday. Not one of them felt like that. I got in my truck in the church lot and I sat there until the parking lot was empty. And then I drove out to the shop on a Sunday and turned on one bank of lights and swept a floor that did not need sweeping for about an hour. While all of that was happening in a laboratory, the other half of it had already started, and I need to back up 9 days to tell it. Wendell made his call on Monday the 25th of August, from a room in Eau Claire, with a device on the line and 2 people listening. It went about 90 seconds. He said he had been thinking about it and he was out, and that he was not going to talk about it again, and that if Grant still needed something, there was a guy he used to know who came through Duluth. Grant said, "Is he all right?" Wendell said, "He is not my friend, and I am not vouching for him, and I do not want $1, and I do not want to know." Grant called him back 40 minutes later and asked for the number. The first meeting was Tuesday the 2nd of September at 8 in the evening, in the parking lot of the Home Center out on the highway, in the far row past the lumber gate where the contractor trucks park. I was 300 yards away in the back of a surveillance van that was actually a plumbing van with the shelves still in it, sitting on a milk crate with a headset on, next to Ortiz and a technician whose name I never learned. I could hear everything. I could not see one thing. That is the part nobody tells you. In a movie, you watch it happen. I sat in the dark in a van that smelled like copper fittings and listened to my life on a headset like a radio program. The technician had a laptop on his knees with 2 green bars moving on it. Every so often he reached over and touched something without looking. Ortiz had his elbows on his knees and his hands together, and he did not move for half an hour. The agent went by Marty. I am not going to describe him beyond what I already have, because he is a real person who is still doing that work. At 2 minutes after 8, I heard a truck come in and park. I know that engine. I have ridden behind it to Rice Lake and to Menominee and to the cemetery. Then a door, then a second door. I put my hand on Ortiz's arm. 2 doors. I had known for 3 weeks that they were in it together. I had heard her on the tape. I had laid 3 signatures on a kitchen table. Knowing it and hearing a second door are not the same thing. There is no preparing for the second door. A door closing is about a second long. That is all it is. 1 second of a sound I have heard 10,000 times in a parking lot, and it went through me like cold water down a collar. And Ortiz turned his head and looked at me in the dark of that van, and I shook my head at him and took my hand off his arm. Nobody spoke for about 11 seconds. And then my sister's voice, close to the microphone, said, "You're the one Wendell knows. She got out. He stayed in the truck. I want that written down somewhere permanent." Grant Vollmer sat in the cab with the engine off for the entire first meeting. 31 minutes. And my sister stood out on that blacktop in September and did the talking. She shook his hand. You can hear it on the recording, the shift in her breath as she reaches. She said Wendell had said he was reliable. She asked whether he had done work like this. Marty said he did not answer questions like that in a parking lot. Then she said, "Fair enough. in a friendly way, the way she says it to a customer who wants a discount. Marty did what he had been told to do, which was almost nothing. He asked what they wanted. He did not say what. He said, "So what is it?" And then he stopped talking, which is the same thing Dale taught me on a job site in 1999, and I sat in a van and listened to a federal agent use my dead foreman's trick on my sister. She filled the silence. She said there was a person who was going to have an accident at a workplace. She said the workplace was a metal building. She said the timing mattered a lot, and the appearance mattered more than the timing. She never said my name. Not one time in 31 minutes. She said her, and she said the person. And once she said the owner, Marty asked why him and not somebody local. And Shelby said, "Because local people talk. And you're not local." He told them he needed to think about it. He said he does not decide anything the first time he meets somebody. He gave them nothing. He asked for nothing. He made no offer. And he left first, which is procedure. The truck sat there another 2 minutes, right before it pulled out, with her door open. My sister said something to Grant that the microphone caught off the side of Marty's jacket as he was walking away. The technician pulled it up clean about an hour later back at the office, and Ortiz played it for me twice, and then a third time because I asked, "I am going to put it at the top of the next thing I tell you, because it is the sentence that ended 21 years, and I do not want it buried in the middle of a paragraph." She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. She always has. That is what my sister said to Grant Vollmer in a home center parking lot on the 2nd of September, with her hand on the door of his truck. Not, "This is hard," not, "I feel sick," not even, "We have to be careful." She said it the way you would tell somebody a fact about a machine you have operated for a long time. The second meeting was Monday the 8th of September at 7 in the evening. In the gravel lot of a church that has been closed since 2011 out on County Highway S. And this time there was video, because Marty had a camera in the truck. I watched it 2 days later in a room in Eau Claire with the blinds shut. Both of them got in the cab this time, Grant in the middle, Shelby by the passenger door. It ran 41 minutes. Marty started with money, because money is the thing a real person starts with, and he let them set every number. Grant said 5,000 up front and 15 when it was done. Marty said nothing. Grant said he could do 7 up front if it had to be 7. Marty said the number was fine and he was not negotiating, he was listening. Then my sister put things on the seat between them, a printed schedule, 1 month, off our shop calendar. My jobs, my out-of-town days. The Thursday, I go to the co-op at 6 in the morning, which I have done every Thursday for 11 years. Then a photograph she had taken on her phone of the dry erase board on the wall outside my office. And then a key. It has a yellow plastic tag on it. The tags came from a box of 500 that my father-in-law bought in about 1990, and we are still using them. There is a paper insert under the plastic with a word written on it in Loretta's handwriting. I had stood in front of that cabinet in May and looked at an empty hook and decided I had probably taken it home in a barn coat. Marty picked it up and turned it over and read the tag out loud, on camera, which he did on purpose, and asked what it was. "That's her house," Shelby said. Then Marty asked the question he had been sent in there to ask, and he asked it lazily, like a man checking a box. He asked why it had to look like an accident. And my sister explained it to him. In order. For about 90 seconds. She said the policy had been in force 4 years, so the company had run out of any right to contest it, and she said that part the way a person says a thing she asked somebody about once, at a kitchen sink, with a dish towel in her hands, and never forgot the answer to. Then she said, if it goes down as a homicide, the claim sits. She said a death benefit on an accident is usually paid in 30 to 60 days once the certificate is issued. But the second there is an open investigation, the carrier can hold it as long as they want and nobody can make them move. And then she said the other part. She said if there is a homicide investigation, the beneficiary is the first person they look at. She said. And this is close to word for word. If they're looking at me, I don't get any of it. Not $1. That's the whole thing. It has to be an accident or there's no point. Marty said. Sounds like you read up on it. And Shelby said. I did. Then he asked about the timing. And she told him it had to be before the 13th. He asked what was on the 13th, she said. Her wedding. She did not say my wedding to him. She said her wedding to a stranger about her sister, sitting 6 inches away from the groom. Then Marty leaned back against his door and asked the last one. He said he did not like working behind somebody who had never done it, because people who have never done it panic and start calling. Grant said he was not going to panic. Marty said, that is what they all say. And Grant Vollmer, 46 years old, a structural welder from Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, said this. He said, this ain't the first one. Then he told him about Bloomer. He talked for a little under 2 minutes. He talked about a torsion assembly. He talked about backing 2 set screws off just far enough that it would hold through a few cycles and let go on its own later. So nobody could put anybody at the building. He said the timing was the only hard part, and the timing had gone wrong, and he said it had gone wrong because it took the wrong person. And he said a name. He said Kurt Vane charged him $4,000 and did it in 11 minutes with a 1/4-inch driver, and while he said all of it, on the video, from the middle seat of a truck, he took the thumb of his right hand and rubbed the knuckle of his left ring finger. 2 passes, back and forth. I have watched that 41 minutes more times than is good for a person. I did not cry, either time or any time since. I want to be honest about what I did instead, because it is strange, and I have never told anybody but Loretta. I counted how many times my sister called me her sister. 11. They killed me on Wednesday the 10th of September at 6 in the morning. The shop was closed. I had told the crew there was a carrier inspection and to take the day, and Loretta called each of them at home the night before, so it came from her and not from me. There were 5 people in that building. Ortiz, 2 agents I did not know, a woman from the evidence response team with a camera bag, and me. The woman did my head first, sitting on a 5-gallon bucket with a little kit open on the workbench. It is not paint, it is a gel, and it is cold, and she put it along my hairline over my right ear and worked it back with a comb so it looked like it had run. And then she stood back and squinted at it the way Loretta squints at a column of numbers. Then we did the door, Bay 2. The one that sticks at the 3rd roller. We ran it down to about 18 inches off the deck and blocked it there on 2 jack stands with a strap so it could not move. And I lay down on the concrete on my left side and slid my head and shoulders under the bottom rail. Left arm behind me. Right leg straight. Left knee up. 1 boot off. A yard away. Laces still tied. That is what it looks like. I have seen photographs. I looked at them for 2 hours the year OSHA was in my building, and I could have drawn that boot for you. She shot 17 frames with a regular camera on a strap, no flash rig, no tripod. And she did it from a crouch and from the doorway and once from up on a step stool, because she said an amateur takes pictures like a person, not like a photographer. I was down there 9 minutes. The floor of that shop in September is 55 degrees. It comes up through you. I could smell the concrete and the sealer and the cold, sweet smell that a floor drain gets, and the door rail was 4 inches from my chin, and I lay there with my eyes closed and my hand behind my back, and did not move. I thought about Dale. I thought about him going up that ladder at 9 in the morning on the 18th, in Bloomer, in a co-op building with the sun coming through a translucent panel, because a woman he worked for had to go stand at a cemetery and watch a stone get set. And I thought a thing I have not said out loud to anybody except Bev, later, in her kitchen. I thought, I am lying in the spot he was supposed to lie in, and I owe him an apology for being alive in it. Ortiz took my hand and got me up. He did not say anything comforting. He said, "Your color came out good. Get the boot. That is when I stopped being afraid of these people. I do not entirely know why." The next afternoon was Thursday, the 11th of September. Junie's has been on 53 for 19 years. 9 tables, a counter with 8 stools, a pie case that hums, and a kitchen door with a round window in it that swings both ways. They asked Junie to take the afternoon off. Somebody from the county told her there was a health inspection issue with the water line and that she needed to be out from 2 to 6. She went. She did not ask a question. She did not speak to me for 3 weeks afterward, and she had every right. And when she finally did, she said, "You let me get told a lie by a stranger about my own building." And I said, "Yes, I did." And she said, "Okay," and poured me a coffee, and that was the end of it. At 4 o'clock there were 4 people in that diner. Marty was in the 3rd booth facing the door. A man and a woman were at the counter in reflective vests with a road atlas open in front of them, and neither one of them ever turned around. And I was behind the kitchen door with a headset on and one hand flat against the frame. Grant's truck came in at 4:02. I heard it through the wall before I heard it on the headset. They sat down across from him. Shelby by the window. Grant on the aisle. Marty did not say hello. He reached down beside him and put a manila envelope on the table and slid it across the formica with 2 fingers. Grant looked out the window. "I want you to understand that I could not see any of this. I was 4 meters away behind a swinging door with a round window in it, and I did not use the window one time. I heard the clasp. I heard paper against formica. And then I heard my sister say, 'Huh.' That is what she said. Not a scream, not a gasp, not a sound. 'Huh.' The sound you make when a part number comes up different than you expected. I heard the second photograph come out from under the first one. And then she asked her question, and her voice was completely even. She asked whether the money comes faster if the county writes it up as an accident. Marty told her he was not the insurance man. Then he asked about the last one, and he asked it the way a man asks about a job he is about to bill for. He said he liked to know how a thing got handled before, so he did not do it different and make somebody curious. Grant answered him. He said it again, out loud, in a diner, with a federal recorder running. Bloomer, the set screws, Kurt Vane, $4,000. And this time he added a piece he had not given in the truck. And Ortiz told me later it was the piece that mattered most. He said, "That one was supposed to be her, too." Then my sister put an envelope on the table and pushed it across. $15,000 in bank straps, in a white envelope with the flap tucked instead of sealed. Marty picked it up and set it in his lap and did not count it. He said, "All right." Then he reached up and scratched the back of his neck. I put my hand on the door. Here is what I want to say about the 11 steps from that kitchen door to booth 3, because people always ask me what was going through my head, and the honest answer is going to disappoint them. Nothing was going through my head. I was not thinking about a speech. I had not written one. I had thought about it for 4 days, and every version of it sounded like a woman in a movie. And somewhere around Tuesday night I decided I was not going to say anything at all. I pushed the door and I walked. Grant saw me first. He was on the aisle and I came from his side, and he turned his head about halfway and then stopped. He blinked 3 times. That is all he did. 3 blinks. Fast. Like a man walking out of a building into the sun. Shelby did not turn until the chair moved, because I pulled a chair off the next table and set it at the end of their booth and sat down at the open end of it. I sat down next to my sister, not across from her. And I did not look at Grant Vollmer one single time. Not when I sat down, not while I was there, not when I got up. I have not looked at that man since the 11th of September, and I do not intend to. The whole thing was between 2 women. She said my name. I did not answer her. I took the recipe card out of my jacket pocket and I put it on the table and slid it over in front of her. 3 by 5. Ruled on one side. Blue ballpoint. Nutmeg smeared so it reads like nutmog. A spot in the lower left corner gone translucent from butter 30 years ago. She looked down at it. I said one thing. I said, "That's the last thing of hers you didn't get. That is all. That is the whole speech. 11 words in a diner with a pie case humming. I have been asked whether I planned that, and the answer is no." I had the card in my pocket because I had carried it in my pocket for 4 days. And I do not have a good reason for it, and I have stopped looking for one. Then the door opened. There was no shouting. Nobody said freeze. 4 people came in, and 2 of them were already standing at the counter in reflective vests. They put the handcuffs on the tabletop first. I have thought about that a lot since. They set them down on the formica in front of each of them, quietly, and then said the words, and then took the wrists. I asked Ortiz about it afterward, and he said it is how you keep a room calm, because a person who sees them first does not fight. Grant Vollmer did not say one word. Not one. Not on the way up. Not going through the door. Not in the lot. He stood up when he was told to, and he put his hands back, and he looked at the floor of a diner he has eaten in 100 times. And he went. I have almost nothing good to say about him. That is the only thing I have. My sister said my name twice. The first time it was a question. It went up at the end. The second time it did not. The second time it was the voice she has used on me since she was 15 years old. The one that means, "Come here and fix this." And I heard it go across that room and hit me in the back, and I did not turn around. I was looking at a woman in a reflective vest bag, up 17 photographs of me lying under a door. The one on top was the second one, the one that got lifted out and held closer to the window. Then somebody held the door and the room got quiet, and I sat down on a stool at Junie's counter with my hands on my knees. There was a truck going by out on 53 with cattle in it. It was 4:20 in the afternoon and the sun was still all the way up. A federal grand jury in the Western District of Wisconsin returned the indictment in October. I am going to give you the shape of it once, and then I am going to stop. Because I am not a lawyer and I am not going to sit here and explain law to you. There were 2 counts that mattered. Conspiracy to use a facility of interstate commerce with intent that a murder be committed for hire, and the substantive count, the act itself. Both of those counts carried an allegation attached to them that changes everything about what happens to a person afterward. That death resulted Dale Croning. The government's case for that allegation was 3 things laid on top of each other. A laboratory report on 2 set screws and a shaft. A man saying it out loud in the middle seat of a truck on the 8th of September, and the same man saying it again, with a detail added, in a booth at a diner on the 11th. Without the death allegation, the ceiling is 10 years. With it, the ceiling is the rest of your life. They picked up Kurt Vane in Superior 4 days after the diner. He was at work. He did drywall now. He gave it up in about an hour and a half, and then he sat with them for 2 more days. And what he told them lined up with that laboratory report down to the size of the driver. He said he was paid $4,000 in an envelope in a parking lot in Bloomer, and that he was told the person on the ladder would be a woman, and that when he heard on the news that a 58-year-old man had gone off a scissors lift, he threw up in a gas station bathroom in Rice Lake and did not sleep for a week. I have thought about whether that makes him better. I have decided it does not. But I wrote it down here because it is true, and I am not going to leave out the true things that complicate it. Grant Vollmer pled. He signed the agreement in January. He never spoke in that courtroom except to answer the judge with "yes, sir," and he never once turned around. And I never once looked at him. My sister went to trial. Her attorney ran the only defense that was available, which is that she was a woman with $19,000 in credit card debt who fell in with a man who did the thinking. It is a real defense. Sometimes it is even true. It was not true here, and the tape is the reason. She got out of the truck first. She shook the hand. She brought the schedule, the photograph of the board, and a key with a yellow tag on it. She explained the claim timeline for 90 seconds without being asked a single question. I testified over 2 days. 2 hours and 40 minutes total. The hardest part was not what you would think. Her attorney took me through the 9 months after Pete died. 3 cans of beer. Every night. Alone. In the shop office with the lights off. He asked it 4 different ways, and every way was designed to make a jury wonder whether the woman on that stand is reliable, which is his job, and I answered all 4 of them straight. I said yes, I said 9 months, I said 3 a night. I said I stopped on my own on a Tuesday and I have not had one since. I said the only 2 people on earth who knew about it were Bev Croning and the man sitting at that table. He did not have a follow-up. Loretta told me afterward that the reason it landed is that I did not fight it. She said a jury forgives everything except a person who trims. And one time in 2 days. My sister and I looked at each other. It was during a sidebar. The lawyers were up at the bench and the room was doing that shuffling thing rooms do, and I turned my head and she was already looking at me. I do not know how long it went. Loretta says 4 seconds. It felt like a lot longer. She looked down first. That is the whole thing. That is all that happened. She looked at the table in front of her and I kept looking at her for another second, and then I looked at the floor, and I counted the tiles between my shoes and the rail, which is 9. The jury was out for 5 hours and 20 minutes. 3 weeks after the sentencing, I drove out to Bev Croning's house on 6th Street on a Saturday morning with 2 things on the passenger seat. The first was the key to truck 4. The second was a folder from a lawyer in Eau Claire transferring 40% of Halverson Door and Dock to her. She did not take it. Not that morning. We sat on her porch for about 40 minutes and talked about her tomatoes and about the roof on the church and about nothing at all. Then she asked me a question. She asked whether Dale said anything that morning before he left, and I told her the truth, which is that he came into my office the afternoon before with the marker still in his hand and told me he was taking the co-op because they were setting my mother's stone at 9. And that when I told him no, he erased my name himself. Bev sat there for a second. Then she said, "That sounds like him," and she laughed. One short one, and wiped her eye with the back of her wrist. And I found out that I could say his name all the way through without my throat closing. First time in 14 months, I unlocked the man door on the east side at 6:15 in the morning. Bay 1, Bay 2, Bay 3, 90 seconds of orange before it goes white. Overhead, door number 2 does not stick at the third roller anymore. I fixed it in September, in the weeks between the arrests and the arraignment, because I needed something to do with my hands that had a beginning and an end. Track shim and a hex driver, 40 minutes. The way I said it would take. 2 years ago, that would have felt like nothing. Now every single morning I hear that door go up clean, and it is the best sound in the building. There are 8 names on the board. Wendell Traxler is the lead installer. He took it in November, and he made me say out loud in front of the crew that it was not charity before he would sign the paper. He still gets to the shop 20 minutes early. He still carries the green lunchbox. Trevor is a good hand now, which is about 3 years ahead of what Grant said in a truck, and I take a small ugly satisfaction in that. The name on the door of truck 4 is still Dale Croning. Bev decided that. She said, "Take it off when you need the door skin replaced, and not before." It has been repainted around the lettering twice. Loretta Zemer is 69. She comes in at 5. She retires every Friday. Junie's is open at 6. I took 3 days off in September, not the wedding week. The wedding week I worked because there was a leveler down at the creamery and a plant manager who buys me a Sprite when he is wrong. I went the week after. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I put 1 bag in the truck and drove up to Bayfield and got a room at a place with a gravel lot and a window that opened. Wendell's green lunchbox rode up there with me the whole way. He had set it on my desk the morning of the arrests and never come back for it. And I had not gotten around to handing it over, and I did not notice it on the seat until I was past Hayward. And after that it was a passenger. I walked out on the rocks Friday morning and it was 41 degrees and there was nobody down there but a man with a dog way off at the other end. I had a fish sandwich at a place on the highway with a hand-lettered sign. I slept 11 hours, which I have not done since I was 30. That is the whole vacation. 3 days, 1 bag, and a lunchbox on the passenger seat. I know that is not much of a reward for a year like that. It was enough. There is a kind of tired that only comes off you in a room where nobody knows your name. And I got it off me in a motel in Bayfield with a plastic ice bucket on the dresser. There is somebody new at the front desk. She is fine. She is good at it. I have not gotten used to somebody sitting in that chair, and I do not know if I will. And every so often I come around the corner and my head does something before I catch it. Here is what I want to tell you. And then I am going to let you go. I have not forgiven my sister. I have not visited. I have not written. She has written me twice, and I have both of them in a drawer. And I have not opened either one. I am not telling you that because I am proud of it. I am telling you because I got tired of hearing that healing means one particular thing. And I want somebody out there to hear a woman say it plainly. I did not forgive her, and I sleep fine, and my hands are steady. And the shop made money last year. Maybe that changes when I am 60. It is not a decision I made forever. It is a decision I made for this year. And then I get to make it again. What I did lose is not what people think. People think I lost a wedding. I did not care about the wedding much by the end. I lost 21 years of thinking I did something. I raised that girl. I signed a paper in a kitchen that smelled like bleach when I was 26 years old, and I gave her every year after that. And I believed, all the way down, that if you pour that much into a person, it becomes a floor underneath you. It does not. It is not a floor. Nothing you give anybody becomes a floor. And that is the part I want you to take, because it is the part that has cost people I know the most. If you are giving somebody in your family your money, Your years, your health, your house, your quiet, and you are telling yourself it is going to come back around as safety. Please hear me. It will not come back around as safety. It might come back around as love. It might not come back around at all. But it is never a floor. And if you are building on it, you are building on nothing. The people who showed up for me did not owe me a thing. Loretta, who is not related to me, who kept a file in her own house for 4 months because I told her to do whatever she wanted. Junie, who told me the truth in a kitchen when it was not her business. Bev Croning, who held my hand in a church aisle every Sunday for 5 years and told me it was not my fault, and who was wrong about that in a way that turned out to be the kindest thing anybody ever said to me. And Wendell Traxler, who did 6 years, who had one thing in the world worth protecting, which was that he was done, and who walked into my office with his hands empty and put it on the table anyway. Not one of them was blood. All 4 of them showed up. So here is what I want you to do tonight. And it is not a feeling, it is a task, and it takes 10 minutes. Get the folder, whatever folder you have got. Insurance, the deed, the power of attorney, the beneficiary line, the account with somebody else's name on it because it was easier that way in 2014. Open it and read what is actually written on it. Not what you meant, not what you were told, what it says. Then find out how to change it. And find out who gets notified when it changes. I am not telling you somebody is coming for you. Almost nobody has a Grant Vollmer. I am telling you that I hung doors for 22 years, and every single time I got called out to a building where something came down on somebody, it came down because of a part nobody had looked at in a long time. Go look at your parts. That is the whole thing. That is all I have got. Thank you for staying with me.